We'll get started here in a minute. Hey, if you're tuning in, leave a note in the chat just to say hey, and we'll get started in a minute.
Hey, folks. Great question, Mohammed.
Hey, everybody. Happy weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and get started here. If you're tuning in and you don't know who I am, I'm Tanner Christensen. I am the founder of shape.co, where I work with a bunch of design leaders and recruiters, years of experience that I've had myself to help designers learn how to interview. And today, I thought I would just hang out, have a very casual chat with whoever wants to attend, and just talk about design portfolios and review some portfolios live, and yeah, just see what's going on in the world today. So, hey, do me a favor. If you can hear me okay, let me know in the chat. If you feel like this sounds kind of off, you can also let me know that. Otherwise, we'll get started. Hey, Muhammad. Hey, MT. Right away, a great question. Can Dribbble profiles work as portfolios, or do we need to set up a website? Dribbble can absolutely work as a portfolio. So let's maybe even start out there by pulling up Dribbble. I am on Dribbble. I don't use it super proactively. I'm also in an interesting career place, so I wouldn't say look at my own Dribbble as an exemplary like portfolio or anything. But yeah, I think Dribbble can work really well. Maybe we can like find some. Thanks for letting me know you can hear me okay. I've seen some good Dribbble portfolios before, and I think with the new, what is it called, like case study feature that they have, you can do some really interesting things. There are some problems with using Dribbble as your profile, but I'll get into those in a second. So here's James. I think James is like a great designer. If you don't know James, he's just an incredible designer, really creative. And I always like to check out some of his work on here. You can see this is a little bit of a case study in that you've got this like nice, what appears to be a video. He's showing interactions. If you are a product designer, a UX designer, seeing animated, basically your designs in motion is really, really beneficial. It shows that you've thought about more than just static screens. You've thought about like how this actually will interact. So this is great. And then down here, he's got like a more detailed look at the icons, what appears to be like cover state. That's really cool. What's obviously missing from this is context and information about the designs and why he made these decisions and things like that. Maybe if we go to like, so we've got this case study label up here. If we go to this one, it's pretty much the same thing. He's got a lot of different screenshots. I love that. That's exactly what you want to see on a portfolio of work. You want to see multiple screenshots. A little bit of process would be nice. So yeah, I do think Dribbble can work really well as a portfolio, especially if you added on like a custom domain, which I know they support for pro members. The downside to having Dribbble as a profile or as a portfolio, in my opinion, the downside is that you're already overwhelmed with a lot of other competition on the website, right? Like that's the point of Dribbble. It's like a social network for designers. So even if I, as a recruiting manager or a hiring manager, if I'm interested in you, and you send me a link to your portfolio on Dribbble, and it's on Dribbble, like what we're seeing here, not like the portfolio feature that they supply. Hey OTP, yes, this should be recorded and on my YouTube live, my YouTube channel later. So peace out if you can't attend too long. We'll be here for a while, so come back too if you can, hanging out. But what I was saying is, on Dribbble, you've got this competition issue where if I'm a hiring manager or recruiter and I'm looking at your portfolio, I might be, okay, this is really interesting. I wonder what, like, for example, other designers are saying. Clean minimalistic design. Okay, interesting. Let me click on this other person too. And like now you've lost me, right? Like you don't have control of the experience. And so now I'm on someone else's profile, and that's not the best. Whereas if you have a more dedicated digital profile or portfolio, sorry, a dedicated portfolio is all of yours, right? It's uniquely you. So you're not against a bunch of competition and things like that. But if you're just looking to put up a portfolio really quickly, you don't want to invest too much in building like a website or a PDF or something. Yeah, Dribbble is fantastic. I highly actually recommend it. They've got some really great pro features. I think it's called Playbook. Let me see if this is true. Yeah, I think like I think with their portfolio thing, you can basically create a dedicated website portfolio for yourself. $15 a month, not too expensive. They support all the things you'll need as a designer to build a great portfolio. So yes, great question. I do want to get to a few portfolio reviews here in a minute, but let's take a look at some other things here. So let's see, Christina, what are your thoughts on portfolio template sites like UXfolio or Squarespace? I'm all for it, honestly. Just like using Dribbble for your portfolio, using a template builder like I was gonna say Webflow. I'm not sure if they have a lot of templates. I've used Squarespace in the past to build a portfolio. That's what I previously had actually before my most recent portfolio update. It's fine. Don't worry too much about the template. Don't worry too much about it being a design that other designers have. And we'll get into this as I start talking about portfolios. But don't worry about that stuff. The ultimate thing that matters in a portfolio is that it's discoverable, it's easy to navigate, and you let your work and your case studies, your stories shine. That's all that a hiring manager or recruiter cares about. They do not care if it's like a plain text website. They do not care if it's a like a templated designed website. That means nothing to most of them. Yes, if you have time and energy and interest, building a custom experience is always better, of course. But it's just not that much better in terms of what a recruiter or hiring manager is looking for. And you'll see this as we go through portfolios. A lot of designers tend to design their portfolio for other designers, right? They want to show off their work, show off their creativity in a way that like makes other designers say, whoa, that's so cool. But you don't need to do that. You really, really do not. In fact, I'm personally a big fan of simplistic portfolios. Let's see, MT has a comment that I wanted to call out here. Notion seems to be a sort of decent no-code platform to get your case studies up. Yeah, I think that's true. I do think that's true. I think Notion has like some really interesting templates and things. And again, it doesn't matter really how your portfolio looks. Like, look at this example template right here. It's got designer portfolio, it's got an intro statement, and it's got a gallery of work. Like, this is exactly what someone wants to see when they're looking to hire a designer, right? It's got this nice template. Like, yeah, this is totally fine. Notion, Dribbble, you can absolutely use those to build great portfolio websites and presence. Again, I want to be really clear here. In my experience, in my opinion, what matters when building a portfolio is that it's discoverable, meaning it's easy to access. Maybe I'm a recruiter, I'm on the go, and my hiring manager sends me a portfolio and says, can you take a quick look at this? And I like pull it up on my phone. Does it work on the phone, right? Is it discoverable on the phone? The second thing is you want to make sure it's easy to navigate. As a recruiter, as a hiring manager, I want to be able to jump back and forth between projects, see what kind of experiences you have, where they overlap, where they're different. And then I also want to be able to basically understand that work, understand your experience. And we'll get into that in a minute. I want to hear your journey of discovery. That's something I think really matters. That's missing in most portfolios today. That journey of discovery. Get rid of the design process, get rid of that framework. I want to hear about the journey of discovery. Okay. Brandon says, I thought my portfolio was too plain. Well, Brandon, if you're comfortable sharing for this live stream, shoot a link to your portfolio and I would love to take a look. In fact, let's dive into some portfolios now. My hair is driving me nuts here. So we got a comment on my LinkedIn post from Carla who said, would love to have you look at my portfolio. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to her LinkedIn. I'm not going to read through any of this stuff to bias myself. Actually, I will quickly throw out a thing here. If you have a LinkedIn and you're featuring your resume, don't do that. If someone's looking at your LinkedIn, this is your resume. It should be almost identical to the bullets you have here, the things that you're featuring. Don't have a resume as your featured link here. It doesn't help your use case, right? It's redundant. Users can literally just come here and save to PDF, and now they have your resume, which is your LinkedIn. Instead, either don't have anything featured or feature your actual link to your portfolio. Hey, Joel. Wow. Didn't know you'd be showing up. Now I feel like I need to up my game here. Okay, so like I was saying, please don't feature your resume on LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is like your resume. Don't waste the space, right? Okay, so I'm gonna try to find a portfolio. Contact info is where they tend to stick it. You can stick a link up here for your portfolio, by the way, which I think is pretty powerful. Like if you come to mine, you can see I've got a link that literally says portfolio website. Try that out. So Carla, let's see. If I click the info, I can see Christopherson Design. All right, let's check it out. Thanks again for posting your comment. Let's see here. Okay, so we've got a hi there. I'm Carla, a product designer who's fascinated with collaboration, data design, empathy. Wow, this is great. And research. I am a thoughtful problem solver that loves to create meaningful experiences. So the first thing I'm going to say as I go into this portfolio is I'm going to speak openly. I'm going to be honest, try to be constructive in my feedback here. I'm going to be approaching this as if I were a hiring manager, meaning I'm going to assume the role of someone who has an open role, and I'm looking through these portfolios to find someone that maybe aligns with the opportunity and that I would love to talk to. So the first thing I'll say for you, Carla, Is this like hi there text is kind of faded, it's blue, it's fading into the background here. Maybe you don't need it. Consider that. Like if it's already almost transparent, maybe just make it transparent. Get rid of it, right? I'm not sure what value that adds. You start off with this by saying I'm a product designer. Thank you for doing that. I can't believe how many designers make this mistake where they don't include the kind of title that they're going for or the role that they're interested in. They just say like, I love collaboration, I love design. Well, if I'm hiring a product designer, I want to know that you associate yourself with that title or those responsibilities. So flat out just saying I'm a product designer. Fantastic. Fascinated with collaboration, data design, empathy, human psychology, and research. A thoughtful problem solver that loves to create meaningful experiences. So the reason that I'm actually talking about this introduction statement here, the reason I'm diving into this is because this does matter. In my experience, having a real quick blurb of who you are and the kinds of things I might expect as a hiring manager diving into your portfolio, this gives me like, it's a primer, right? You're essentially setting the stage. Also, I don't know if you all can hear my dogs. Hear my dogs going crazy in the background, but they're having a good morning. So this can be a really helpful thing to have. I know a lot of designers make fun of these intro statements, but they can be really valuable. The one thing that I would say here, in addition to making sure you have your title listed, the one thing I'd say is make sure that what you're saying is really, really clear and if possible, focused and gives examples. So what I mean by that, here, Carla, you say that you're fascinated with collaboration, data design, empathy, human psychology, and research. That's great. Like, I love the fact that you're fascinated with those things. I would question though, like, what do those things mean? Because to me, this reads almost like you did a Google search. Like, what do product designers do? And then you can like come and find a role. Okay, they discover and define a problem and they empathetically design a solution. Maybe let's do like what skills. So interaction, UI design, visual design, communication. Essentially, when you list out skills like this, it just feels like you Googled that. Like, what do designers do? Let me stick that on my website. Now, I'm not saying you did that, of course. I don't think that's true. I think that you're trying to be authentic and show your interests, but this is really vague. This doesn't really tell me about you. Your second statement here gets closer. A thoughtful problem solver that loves to create meaningful experiences. But again, this feels very buzzwordy. It feels very fluffy. What does this mean to you? Like, why do you love to create meaningful experiences? Don't tell me you love to create meaningful experiences. Tell me why you love to create meaningful experiences. And you've got this human connection part in here. That's really interesting. Does that mean like you're mostly interested in social media websites, or you want to work on like social networks or something? Or like, what does human connection mean? So get really clear if you can. Yeah, MT has a comment here that says, you know, the issue is that they're usually not really authentic. It's full of buzzwords. It's really, really not great. I'll use myself as an example. I don't want to do this too much as we talk about portfolios because my career experience and where I'm at is very, very different than where you're probably at. I've got a little buzzy word up here. You can ignore that part. But I just basically summarize my work experience. And this is really helpful, right? I built and led the design function at a company. I designed software for autonomous vehicles. I led design. Fun little blurby thing, but this is like much more personable, right? Like not everyone can say that they've done this stuff. And that's what we're looking for. Use this as an opportunity to tell us what's unique about you and your experience. All right, I'm spending too much time on that, so I'm gonna keep going. The other thing, Carla, I wanna call out is like this nice logo. It feels a little mishmatch with the rest of the website, and it looks like it's a static asset, which means it's not gonna scale. Oh, it does. What? Is that an SVG? How did you do that? The text looks blurry. It is an image, so you must be doing responsive images. The text is a little blurry at this size. It's kind of hard to read. I'm not really sure about this. If you're trying to be an agency, you're not trying to be freelancer, this is probably fine. But if you're trying to, what I meant to say, if you're trying to get a job, this feels a little misleading. This feels like you're trying to be an agency instead of an individual designer. So if that's your goal, awesome. I think I would treat this entire portfolio differently. But I'm assuming that you're probably a hiring manager. Or sorry, you're looking to get a product design role. So then I'm going to come down to the work here. Pause permitted. Pause permitted is an app to help dog owners find hikes and accompanying information. That sounds awesome. As a dog owner myself, I'd be interested in checking this out. But real quickly, I'm going to scan the whole page. And the reason I do this as a hiring manager is for two reasons. I'm going to scan the page before I dig into anything, before I click on anything. The reason for that is I want to know who you are, get a sense for that. I also want to get a quick overview of kind of the work that you've done before. So I'm going to look at these screenshots, kind of try to evaluate the designs I see. I'll read the title. I want to get a sense for who you are. And the second thing is I want to see if there's a project you have that might interest me. So I want to see broad strokes across your work, your experiences. And then I'm going to dive deep into something that maybe appeals to me and the needs that I have on my team. So you've got Grundle Therapy, a mental health website. I will say right away, ignoring the fact that these are mock-ups, the design here looks really nice. I like the typography. I like kind of the balance here. And then I get to this one, and this feels really off. I'm curious why this design looks so different than this one. This in terms of craft and polish. Something's going on there, so I'm interested in that. Figma spell check. As a design hiring manager, I really, really appreciate this. I'm eager to look into that one as well. You've got some interesting work already. Pedal cycling thing. So right away, some of the thing that stands out to me is you've got a diversity of work here, which is really, really interesting to me. But I'm going to dive into this first one because, again, I'm a pet owner myself. The quality looks good from this like minimal screenshot. I do wish I could click on this image for what it's worth. Super small nitpick that I have to click this button, but that's not worth really worrying too much about. Okay, you've got some nice loading here. I love the fact that you're just calling out what this is rather than me guessing, is this a mobile website? Is this something responsive? It's an iOS. Makes me wonder if it's iOS only. Mobile application. Super cool. What I don't know about is this. An app to aid outdoor enthusiasts in finding dog-friendly hikes. This is a super common issue I see with tons of portfolios, which is, okay, your balance here is off too. I wonder if that's just because I resized. No. There's this, you might want to work on your scaling here. Like, you're a designer. Why is this gap massive here? I don't know what's happening. But what I'm saying is, you're telling me about the business, about the product, but I'm not interviewing the business. You're not trying to sell that business to me as a hiring manager. So don't advertise it as such. Instead of talking about the app, tell me about you. Why are you showing me this project? Why should I care about this project? This means nothing to me, this context here, right? I don't care. So don't tell me about the app. Tell me about you. Was this like your first freelance project out of university? Was this a very challenging experience for you? Or was this just a delightful, fun experience that you really enjoyed? Whatever your answer is to that question, that's what I want to see here. I really quickly want to address, hey Carla, hopefully it's okay that we're talking about your portfolio here. Carla says, for the opening blurb, how about someone with no UX experience? It's a good question. So like, what do you put here if you don't actually have experience in these things? That's totally fine. In fact, I would say it's not having experience is a reason to take the approach I'm defining, which is don't just list out skills or interests. Tell me why those things interest you. Why are you interested in human psychology and research? Answer that question. That's what I want to read here. And you don't need to cover all these things. You don't need to explain why you love collaboration, data, design, empathy, etc. Pick the one or two that really you feel stand out to you, that you're really interested in, and explain why. Just in 2, 3, 4 words, right? Why is human psychology listed here? Is it because you find people really interesting, and the interconnectedness between people and technology is what makes you want to be a designer, to see how that interplay kind of can function? That's way more interesting. It tells me a lot about you as a person and designer than this kind of blurb here. Additionally, if you don't have a lot of experience, and I don't know about Carla yet, but if you don't have a lot of experience and you say something like loves to create meaningful experiences, how do you know that you love to create meaningful experiences if you don't have experience doing that? Instead, you might say, I'm curious to create those experiences, or I'm passionate to pursue the creation of these things, right? That's more what I want to hear. Hey, Robin, yeah, if you want to share your portfolio in the chat, if you feel comfortable doing that, I would love to take a look at it. I'm going to quickly go through this case study here, though, first. So when I zoom in on this page, it already looks better. That gap I mentioned fills out. There is something, I don't know how you've built this website, Carla, but definitely looking at the sizing and things. It's gonna look a little off balance here. Yeah, kind of weird. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here as I go. Okay, another thing that I like to tell designers is if you've got this big header image on your portfolio, having what we call Chrome, which is the iPhone kind of case here, that's totally fine as a big header image. That gets me excited, it gives me context, helps me understand that this is an iOS app. The problem, as I'm sure you probably already know, Carla, is you didn't design the iPhone, right? Like, I'm assuming you didn't work at Apple and build the hardware iPhone. So why are you showing me the iPhone here? Even if we ignore this right-hand side and just have this left-hand side, the context is interesting. Again, it conveys that this is an iOS app, but I'm not looking to hire an Apple hardware developer. I'm not even looking to hire an iOS designer, right? I'm looking to hire a product designer, which is what you called yourself on your homepage. So show me the product design that you did. And again, as a header image, this is probably acceptable. This is okay. But as I go through your portfolio, I don't want to see, which I'm assuming we'll probably see down here. I don't want to see any like oh, actually you didn't do it. Okay. Oh, here we go. You've got these iterations again, like with this beautiful iPhone. I don't care about that. It's taking up space. It makes it really hard for me to see the details of any of your designs. Get rid of it. Go back to this format. Just show me your designs. This is what I'm looking to evaluate. This is what I want to understand. Oh, cool. You've got a video. That's great. So again, as a hiring manager, I'm just going to come here and kind of skim through things. Another thing that is pretty contentious is get rid of this section. Just get rid of it entirely. I don't care. And here's why I don't care about this section here. The reason that I don't care about this section is just like with your about part, anyone can Google what designers tools they should use. Well, they use Figma. Okay, I'm gonna put that there. They use this research tool called Optimal Workshop. I'm gonna put that there. Skills. Here's again a bolded list of skills. Like, how do I know you actually used these skills? I have no idea. So I'm just going to trust that you didn't Google it and put it on your portfolio. And again, I want to be very clear. I don't think Carla did that. I don't think really many designers do that, but it doesn't convey information that I need to get as a recruiter or hiring manager. It doesn't really tell me anything more than here's a bulleted list of skills that I may or may not have used. Instead of doing this kind of section on any of your portfolio case studies, instead of doing that, get rid of it and incorporate the things you need to convey in the story, right, in the project. So if you say, for example, if you say that you did brand ideation, I want to see that brand ideation somewhere down here, right? You can call it out as like a section if you want to, or a bolded item in here. But even look, okay, here we go. Perfect. You've already done that. Why are you repeating it? Get rid of that section. It's killing time. This is great. So get rid of the skill list, get rid of the team list. I don't care again about the team. This is an interesting team variant. Usually when I see people list a team, it's like hiring manager, or not hiring manager, product manager, 20 engineers, the CEO, whatever. And that's fine. But again, I don't know if you actually worked with those people or how you engaged with them for this project. You could just be listing out the team you were part of, but maybe they didn't work with you on this project. That happens a lot. So instead of listing all these things out, just get to the story and tell me those things as part of the story. Quickly going through this, let's see. I'm going to kind of read this blurb. So here again, this is one of the biggest problems, and even I experience this today. It's really, really hard, is how do you tell an interesting story? I don't think the interesting story is problem, then goal, then research, personas, a task flow, a user flow. Like, that's fine. That's good that you have this understanding of the process. And you can include these things in your portfolio. But what I think might make a better story for a hiring manager and a recruiter who looks at hundreds and hundreds of portfolios a week, if not more, is I want to hear about you. If you did this process, you did research insights first, you did persona next, you did task flow next, that's fine. You can definitely include those sections. But what's missing is like your journey through this project. I really want to know, like, what was hard? Why did you start with research? Like, if I come in here It says I was unable to find applications in my metropolitan area. Okay, so this is this is how you define the problem for the project. You did research. Okay, that's good. This seems like a great project, a great case study. But again, I want to hear more about your personal journey through this. Like, let me give you an example. You did this research insights. You did survey results from 17 respondents. Okay, 17 is a pretty good number. Here's what can make this story stronger. Have you conducted this type of research before, or was it your first time? How did you pick 17 respondents? How did you pick those 17 respondents? I want to hear more about your experience, if that makes sense. So again, like, don't just dive straight into problem and goal. Tell me like how you define that this was a problem and make that your story. And I think, again, Carla's got a pretty good portfolio case study here because she's telling me a little bit about the things that she did, which is really important. But like, what was hard and what did you enjoy? Was this your first time doing that research? Get rid of this stock photo and show me a photo of your research. Show me of your data. If you have it in a table, if you have photos of you talking to people, even just like screenshot of like a Google form results, that's totally fine. But I know for a fact this is a stock photo because I see it from every designer everywhere, right? And it's not telling me much about you and your experience. And if you don't have a photo or screenshot or something of your data, your process, that might be a sign to reevaluate how much you're giving this section on your portfolio, because this is pretty sizable, a lot of content, and it's just not telling me too much about you. It says that you did a survey, but what did you learn from that? Would you do surveys again? What would you do differently? Is 17 respondents enough? How did you screen those respondents? Tell me about what you experienced. And then it says that you go to a user persona from the research, I'm assuming. Well, how did you decide to do that? I don't really care about the persona you landed on. I guess to some degree I do care. But much more important is like, well, how did you go from research to persona? And how did you decide to break up those personas? Right? Like, I don't actually see any details here on how you went from this grouping of results from your research to personas. And if you didn't build personas, if you're just putting this in here because you thought it'd be nice to include, which some designers do, get rid of it. Like, it's not a true reflection of your process. And that, when we talk about seeing design process in case studies, that is what we want to see, is your experience, your journey, your process. You don't need to follow the double diamond or whatever process you think you need to outline. So, okay, I'm going to keep going here. Task flow. I don't really quite understand this task flow or how this came about. So I think that's kind of missing. Is this like the result of the research? I don't know how you landed on this, so that'd be something to consider. And this, again, is a common problem. When you're thinking about case studies in your portfolio, it should be a story. It should be a narrative. It's like reading a book, essentially, a very hopefully short book. And in a book, you typically don't have like a chapter and then a whole new chapter that starts that has nothing to do with the previous section, right? You need to bridge the gap between these two things. How did you go from user persona to task flow? And then from task flow, how did you decide to go to user flow? And how do these two things inform each other? Again, I want to be really clear here. If you don't have answers to those questions, that's okay. Don't try to force those answers. Instead, what that means is potentially you need to get rid of these sections, or they're not reflective of what really happened. I want to hear your journey of discovery through this project. What did you learn about yourself, about your customers, about the design process, about your outcomes? Okay, finally, I'm just gonna skip the rest of this stuff because it's like not teaching me too much. You've got some medium fidelity wireframes. So you went from user flows to medium fidelity. That's totally great. I would be curious if you did any kind of sketching, or something that really stands out to me right now is like, did you talk with your team about any of these things? Like, again, you have a team section listed up here. I don't know who this entails. I'm assuming it's just you, so there is no team. But if there were a team, for those who have other case studies that are similar, usually when you write out team here, again, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what you did. But if down here you can say something like, I came up with a user flow and I talked with a friend about it and they disagreed about something, that is an awesome story, because then I can learn not only what your process was for this project, but also what you do when someone disagrees with you, or what you do when someone has ideas that you can adopt. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear. So you might get to it here in a second. We're not done with the case study, but I want to hear about the interconnectedness, how you leverage the team or other people's feedback. And you don't need to write a novel on this stuff. Just say, at this point, I ran this idea by someone else. They loved it. That kept me going. That motivated me. Or they disagreed, and here's how we kind of overcame that disagreement. Okay, so medium fidelity. Okay, you've got some mentions of competitor analysis here, looking at Airbnb and some other things. I love it. Honestly, I would love to see that research here. Hey, yes, this is being recorded, so if you need to bounce out, if you can't attend the whole thing, this will be on my YouTube channel later. Okay, so I want to see this much larger. I can't seem to click on any of these medium fidelity mocks, but I would love to see them larger. The other thing that I'm noticing right away is it looks like you've got this medium fidelity like landing page, this home page over here on the left side. It's really small, I can barely see it, but I can already tell that looks really similar to what I saw up here. And that raises a red flag for me right away as a hiring manager. Because what I want to know is, how did you iterate? How did you explore decisions? And how did you make decisions, right? That personal journey experience. If you had designed something like this screen before, let me know that. But like, where are all the other mocks or iterations for what this page could look like? That's kind of missing. Okay, Carla has confirmed in the chat it was just Carla doing this design. So there was no real team involved. And that's totally fine. Why do you have a team section then? It doesn't really tell me too much. You can do something like be explicit up here. This is another thing that I would love to see in more portfolios. Anticipate what hiring managers or recruiters, what kind of questions or problems they might have when looking at your work, and get ahead of it. So up here in the very intro as this project, you can just say, this was like a final student project and I was really excited to do it. I didn't have a lot of people to work with, but as you'll see, I was able to leverage things like user research and competitive analysis to inform my decisions. Let me pause there, because I think that that's a super great introduction. Like, that tells me it tells me what I can anticipate from the project. It's much more interesting than saying like, here's this app that you probably don't care about. I know you're here to learn about me and my work, but let me tell you about this other thing, right? Like, I don't care. So tell me about you and set the stage. Was this like this is your capstone project? So like, how were you feeling at that time? Were you burnt out? Were you working a full-time job while working on this? And then further down the line, Carla, again, I want details. Like, how did you pick these 17 people? And then did you talk to friends, your teacher, peers in your school as you went through these steps? Like, what was your experience? If you didn't do any of those things, that's totally okay. But I want to understand where your experience was working through this. Why didn't you talk to anyone else? Was it a time crunch? Were you uncomfortable? Anything that you can add about your personal journey is what's going to be key here. Including, like, did you do iterations? Let me see those iterations. I want to understand why you did or did not do more iterations of these designs. And again, to backtrack slightly here, I want to be able to click this. I want to be able to see this, even medium fidelity, even sketches. I want to see it really large, because at this stage, I can't really evaluate your design decisions, your craft, because I can't see it. I can read and kind of figure it out for myself, but I need to be able to see it. Right, you're a designer. A lot of what we do these days is visual in some sense. Let me see it. So I'm going to come down here, branding ideation. This is really interesting to me. I'm not going to read too much into this because, again, in this scenario, I'm a product design hiring manager. I'm looking for product designers. But telling me that you've done some branding work, it looks like you've got this like nice UI kit for the brand. You've got a pretty plain color palette, iconography. This is cool. I do want to click on this again. And I specifically want to hear why you decided on some of these elements. Again, that's the real bread and butter, I think, here is like, have you done branding guidelines before? If not, what was challenging for you about it? How did you learn to do it? And then how did you decide on like this font style here? And how did you decide on these icons? Were these sourced from someone else, or did you build them yourself? How did you like decide to put them all together in this order? That's the kind of stuff that I want. And then you go to prototype. So what's interesting is you went from medium fidelity wireframes to branding to a prototype. But like this prototype looks kind of similar to these mocks, but what happened? How did you go from this to this? Was it just the branding that unlocked that for you? I don't think so. I have a hunch that you did something in between those steps. I have a hunch you did some explorations. You might have a Figma file or something somewhere with an artboard with like tons of stuff on it. Let me just see a screenshot of that between these two things, you know? Let me see how you went there. And if you can, tell me a little bit more about how you made these decisions, right? Because the kind of things that I want to know as a design hiring manager or recruiter is not, can you make a pretty interface? I want to know if I give you a job, an assignment on a job, and say, I need you to figure out this problem. I want to understand how you're going to approach it. And your case study can help me understand that by telling me about a journey that you've had in the past. So how did you make these decisions? I don't see that really anywhere here. You check the boxes in terms of, I have a process, I know how to use Figma, but I'm not hiring someone to Google the design process and work through it in Figma. I'm hiring someone who can take a problem, a challenge, and work their way through it and all the obstacles that comes with it. And that's just missing in most case studies today. So I'm just going to quickly skip down here. I want to reiterate what I said earlier. If you're just joining, get rid of what we call the Chrome, everything around your designs. I don't want to see that. Let me just see the designs. And here, this is really interesting. Carla, I'll be honest, I don't think anyone's ever going to read any of these lines here. It seems really important. Here are some of those design decisions I see that I was asking about. But the way you're presenting this in like a horizontal scroll where it's just got one additional item off screen for me, and it's got like, I can't actually see the design details. Your kind of points here are really hard to convey alongside this image. I don't really know. Added shadows to card, like pull that out. Let me see that as a single screenshot. Make it super huge. That's what I want to see. And we'll show more examples of that later in this stream. And you've got your final designs. Again, this looks pretty good overall in terms of like visual craft. There are a few things around the balance of things. Your typography is a little kind of jarring. For example, you go to this serif font here for what looks like a little bit of a header of sorts to this sans serif bolded one. Some of those decisions are minor, but that would stand out. For whatever reason, this little dog up here is kind of really appealing to me, but like now you've got this blank space up here, which you could very easily use like a big search title or something, you know? Anyway, I'm not going to read too much into that because the design work itself doesn't matter as much as how you talk about it in a portfolio. That's what I'm looking at, is how do you present it? And you've got a prototype. And I mentioned this earlier. Anytime UX designers or interaction designers or product designers can show interactions being used, that's the best. Like that's what we need to see. And so a video, an animated GIF, anything that can demonstrate that is great. I'm going to preview this real quick. Cool. I love it. Yeah, this is great. I mean, you don't need anything more than this, to be clear. I want to just see, like, you thought about what happens when a user clicks on this. Where do they go? How do they go back? What happens to communicate to them which direction in the navigation they're going? How do things show system status? When I click on a button, does it convey to me that something's happening? That's the kind of stuff you want to show in a video. So this is great. Really good work, Carla. The one missing piece here, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is, well, how did you decide to make this prototype? Because you just kind of say like, I did some designs, here's the final version, here's a prototype. And that's fine. But again, how did you decide to do that? Have you built prototypes before? What happened when you showed this prototype to other people? Did you get feedback? Let me hear about your experience with this, Carla. I want to know what went through your head, because that's going to tell me a lot more about you. You had a lot of fun. Love it. Fun's always a good thing to have. You call it a website down here, which is, it's a small thing, but I thought we were talking about an iOS app. Did I miss somewhere that you switched to a website? Not sure. So maybe look into that. And then, yeah, you think it would be very helpful. That's really cool. Again, when it comes to key insights and reflections, talk more about your journey with the project. The only thing I got was like, it was fun. But what was fun about it for you? Was it the fact that you got to work with like a pet topic? Was it that you prototyped for the first time? You learned a new tool? You learned a new way of working? Tell me about you. So before we go forward here, I want to make sure it's really clear. Something I talk with designers a lot about often is this idea of telling a story in your portfolio. And the best way I have personally found to suss out this story is to talk with someone about it. So what I tell designers to do is what I call the friend conversation. So grab a peer, grab a friend, grab a partner, anyone who will give you an hour of their time. Grab your phone or your computer or something and ask your friend if you can talk about something you worked on. And then press record on your phone or whatever you have and record the conversation and tell your friend, I want to have a conversation about the work. Then tell your friend about the work. How did it get started? What did you do? Who really pissed you off in the work? Who was fun to work with? Just have a conversation. Let them ask you questions as you go. Well, what does that part mean? Or why did you do that? Or whatever else. Have a conversation. After the hour, stop the recording. And now you have basically a transcript outline of what your case study should be. Because if you present your case study, your portfolio work, as if you're talking to a friend, you're going to touch on a lot of the points that a hiring manager and a recruiter wants to hear. And if you pair those points with visuals, sketches, photos, videos, animated GIFs, that is exactly how you make a really strong, unique, and valuable case study for a portfolio. So that friendly conversation is a fantastic way to start your project. Let's see here. I got a comment. Any advice on how to handle confidential case studies? This comes up so much, and I've never experienced confidential case studies to my knowledge, which is, I think, part of the interesting answer here. The first thing is, of course, like password protect your work. Simple enough. Make sure that password's visible on your resume if you're applying to jobs. Make sure other people can get access to that work as needed, but just put a password on it. That's a great way to go about it. Another thing that you can do is change the work a little bit, meaning talk about very specific details without mentioning the brand or the company. Delete, black out, whatever confidential information like the name of the company or specific keywords and stuff. You can do all these things to present work. I promise you, one of the biggest things that designers can do when it comes to building a portfolio of confidential work is they can do it. There are creative ways to do it. I'm going to not go too much into that right now. What I will say is talk to your manager. Go talk to your boss or whoever you worked previously and say, hey, look, I really want to present this work in my portfolio. If you don't want them to know that you're looking for a job, you can say, I just want to make sure I have it up to date. I'm thinking through the process. I want to make sure I have it up to date. I feel really proud of the work I did. Can we find a way to present it reasonably? And I think that you'll find that there's a way to do that. But I won't go into too much detail on that. Cool. So let's go look at a few more portfolios. Again, if you're tuning in here and you have a portfolio you'd love to dive through, you feel comfortable sharing it live, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to start pulling up some random portfolios. Let's see here. And Carla, yeah, really great work on this. I think you've got a really good start. You've got some good assets that you can leverage. Like when I say you need to tell your story, I don't think you need to overhaul your entire case study. You don't need to take hours and hours to figure this out. I think all you need to do is work on that narrative. Like I was saying, tell me more about you and your experience going through this project, and it'll be great. Real quickly, I do want to pull up maybe another one just to compare. Just real quickly here. So here again, you're telling me about the website. Nah, don't care. You've got this like nice, fun, creative grid here. It doesn't make it easy for me to understand the work or kind of your design decisions. So again, I would consider just making this a flat, boring screenshot. Or if you want, because it's a header image, give me some flash, some appeal. Again, I do this myself sometimes. Like if you look at some of my stuff, I've got all this Chrome, right? But when you like go into one of my projects, you've got this header image, you've got like a competitor audit, just screenshots, this nice video I made, and then you've got the work, right? And I can click into it and then kind of see it. I can zoom in, and there's no like fancy Chrome. It's just here's the work. That's what we want to see. So do more of that. Here's the icons, right? Like super simple. Yeah, do that. Yes, if you'd like to share your portfolio and have me pull it up live on stream, just leave a chat comment and I'll check it out, and I'm sure others will as well. Carla, you got to get rid of these stock photos. I get like you're trying to convey what the project is. Don't use stock photos though. You didn't take that photo. It's not your design work. I know you're trying to set the mood, but there's got to be another way, right? Show me a photo of like your initial sketches or something like that. I think I can even show an example. Do I have this example? This is embarrassing, actually. When I started, I built this app called Brainbeam a long time ago. It did really, really well on the iPad. But the way that this project started was, look at this, these screenshots. Like, look at this. This is my very first idea for the app. And this is exemplary in my mind. Obviously, I'm biased because it's my own work, so don't read too much into that. But I want to see these rough sketches, these rough ideas. How did this start for you? Like, is there a journal entry you could say, have just a real quick zoomed in photo of mental health and circled? Like, how did it actually start for you? Show me that. Don't show me stock photos. More stock photos. Like, this is the funniest thing for me too when I see research, but there's no real like screenshots of the research. If you did this research, you should have some collateral around it. Like, let me see it. Show me that evidence. A room of you talking to people. I think I even have this one too for myself. If you come here, oh, maybe I don't. Well, in my portfolio presentation, I show photos of me doing research. So like include that stuff. Okay, cool. So until we get more portfolios, I'm just gonna go to Best Folios. If you don't know this website, it's pretty great. I think it's like behind an account wall to like really get a lot of detail, but they've got some cool stuff here. Ooh, resumes. How did I get that? I want to look at resumes. Are you okay if we look at a quick resume just to see? Because like portfolios, resumes can be kind of hard. Also, if you don't know Carol, she is fantastic. One of my favorite designers. Hopefully we can actually look at her portfolio here in a second, but I want to take a look at this. So pretty simple. She got experience, community, education, skills. Don't include skills in your resume. Just like your portfolio, it doesn't tell me really anything about you. You could have just looked this up online. How do I know you've actually used these things? I want to hear about it in your experience and in your portfolio. I don't need a list of skills. I promise you it does not help. There's no such thing as applicant tracking system that like scans specifically for keywords and auto rejects. That's not true. There are applicant tracking systems that recruiters use, which will try to find keywords like evaluative research. And the ATS will highlight those words and pull them out, but you're not going to get auto rejected. Additionally, going back to my main point here is don't just have a list of keywords. Try to find ways to include those keywords in your work experience. That tells me way more about you and how you use your skills than a bold list. So don't do that. It also cleans up your resume. Other than that, I'm going to look at kind of her experience real quickly. Design a bookmarking tool with the orders, magnitude. Okay, cool. Identify a key area of focus. Led though. Yeah, this is pretty good. The biggest thing that you'll probably hear a lot when it comes to resumes is like start with an action verb. So designed, identified, led, worked with, collaborated, conducted. Those are pretty good words. Harvard Business has a resource, by the way, that you can all use, which is like resume action words. If you just like Google Harvard Business Review resume action words, they have like a list of a bunch of words that you can just use creatively. The one word that I want to call out here is this one here. Worked with development to design an engaging and interactive application portal. Worked with is not a great experience to convey in a resume or portfolio. Like working with someone else is default. It's what is expected of everyone on the job. What made this experience really unique to you? What skills did you have to use to collaborate with them? That's the kind of stuff you want to focus on. Don't just say like I worked with this person, or even collaborated is a little iffy. Collaborated is a good word because we want people who can collaborate, but it's not going to make you stand out. So something to think about. I do like this community section. That's pretty cool. All right, enough of that. Brandon, if you want to share your resume in the chat, or I guess you can like tweet at me, DM me. That'd be great too. Okay, so best folios. I don't know why they're not the best, but they're good. I find a lot of really fun ones on here that I like to look at. So I'm just gonna try to find one here. Go to portfolios. Let's look at Leah. She's a student at CM, intern at Meta, editor's pick. So let's check it out. It's not loading. Try Googling. Okay, so this is really interesting, actually. I don't think we have recruiters or hiring managers who go to a website like Best Folios and try to find designers to hire. This website is not built for recruiters or hiring managers. Okay, they're not gonna come on here and like look for designers. So don't read too much into like trying to get your portfolio on a website like this. It's really not going to help you too much. What will help you though is if I'm a hiring manager and I need to Google you for any reason, maybe I just like forgot the URL to your portfolio or something. One of the best things you can do as a designer is make sure that you have consistency across your online experience. Meaning you need a set of materials that align with who you are and what kind of jobs you're looking for. So I want to see things like your job title, your design interests, wherever you feel comfortable sharing them. So I'm not going to pull it up for privacy reasons. We didn't get permission to look at these portfolios or anything. But like if you have an Instagram and it's the first thing that pops up when I Google your name, look into making sure that you could talk a little bit about your design stuff there if you feel comfortable, if that feels appropriate for you. It can really help you a lot. Okay, let's dive into this portfolio. Oh, before I do that, Mohammed had a question. Is it good to have a summary section on a resume? Yes, if you can keep it concise and clear. It goes back to what I was saying a minute ago, for the portfolio about section, which I think we'll get into here again. You need to talk about you and what makes you really unique or interesting, and also make sure you align with the types of jobs you're trying to get. So for example, this is a really cool portfolio. Right away, one thing I want to say too goes back to the stock photo section. If you don't create the graphics that are on your website, don't include them. Like, I don't know if this was created by Leah or if it's like stock. If she created it, they created it, that's fantastic. That's really cool that you can create these 3D things. Maybe include a little blurb or something to clarify. Otherwise, I may assume this is stock, and that's not terrible, but I'm not here on your portfolio to look at someone else's work. Okay, so the about section. Product designer with a passion for 3D and AR/VR. Currently a grad student, previously worked. Okay, this is cool. I like this. This section here in particular, this little subsection, really, really nice. It gives me some sense that you've worked at some pretty notable companies. So that already is like that social authority. But this opening statement could use a tiny bit of work. And the reason for that is because I want to know why you have this passion. What is it about 3D, AR/VR that makes you drawn toward it? If you can clarify those things on your resume and your portfolio, what you're doing is you're aligning with the search, or not. So if I'm a product design manager and I'm looking to hire a product designer and I come to your website and I see that you're passionate for these things, that's fine. There's two ways that you can improve this though. When you tell me more about why you're interested in those things, maybe I don't have an AR/VR company, but I have some projects that are really innovative and creative and might actually interest you, but maybe they're not in that space. If I know why you're drawn to that work, I'm going to reach out to you. Whereas the current model, I would assume, okay, I'm not hiring for someone in the AR/VR space. I'm not even going to reach out to you. I'm not going to go through your work. I'm going to move on. The other thing is a lot of designers have a passion for 3D, AR/VR. Why do you have a passion for those things? Did you have like some experience? Is there something about the way that the objects have to interact in 3D space? Have you worked in 4D? How does like AR experience excite you as a designer? If you can include a very short blurb about that answers those questions as a header for your portfolio or for your resume, I think that's fantastic. It just makes it way easier for someone to understand what they're about to get into. And that's true on your resume, just as it is on your portfolio. The problem with a resume, including this stuff in a resume, is if it's too long, it's going to get glossed over. No one's going to read it. It's going to push down a lot of your other content. So you need to keep it really concise. But if you can take the same language that people are using in job posts and kind of match that to your passion and interests and experience, an about section is a great priming tool. And I keep using that word because that's exactly what it should be. You're priming me to understand what I'm about to look at. So here for Leah, I'm expecting only 3D, AR, and VR work. If there's other work here, I'm going to be kind of curious, well, what was it about that work that kind of shifted your mentality? So let's just go into a project. AR device, Meta Reality Labs. I actually looked at this portfolio already, and I know that I can't see anything on this project. So yeah, this is interesting. We had a question earlier about, well, how do you show confidential work? This is a great example where there is no work, but there's like a summary of the impact in the story. And that's what a hiring manager and recruiter wants, is we don't even need to see the final work in some cases. We want to hear about you, your experience, your journey. So even if the work is like confidential, you can say in big letters, it's confidential, I can't share it, but here's kind of what I've done. And again, I don't think this is the best example because it's just a bulleted list of accomplishments. I want to hear about the story. So I'm going to skip that one and go to Mentor Connect. Okay, so here again, the exact same problem. Don't use Chrome. It's fine on a header image like this. I think that's okay, but I worry that as I scroll down, I'm not going to be able to see the design details that I need to see. We've got this like kind of nav over here, which is really interesting. That's totally fine with these nice section headers. For what it's worth, this kind of nav blends into this background, so it's kind of hard to see. Let's see here. Again, I mentioned this in the last portfolio. Don't tell me about the project or the business. Tell me about your experience. Like what is it about this project that makes it worthy for your portfolio, right? And that's going to prime me, get me interested in everything else that's about to follow. If you just say, here's the application, that's good context. It is helpful, but it's not as helpful as talking about like your experience. Like, why were you charged with building this application? And again, like, don't tell me your role. Don't do this kind of stuff. This is not helpful. Especially with tools used. Like, you're basically saying I used every tool that designers use. Like, okay, let's see it, right? Okay, prompt. I don't know what prompt means. Were you given a prompt? Did you create the prompt? I need some clarity here. And it says your school, so I'm assuming like someone gave you the prompt to do this project. You've got this nice outline design process. I don't know, like my gut reaction is this just is like a templated thing. So like if I quickly hop over to a different project, are you gonna have the same thing? It looks like it. Okay, this one doesn't have it. That's interesting. So this goes back to what I was saying much earlier as well, which is interesting. Don't just outline the project. Like, don't outline this typical design process. When companies say they want to see your design process, they want to see your design process. They don't want to see a design process. We don't need to know that you can Google double diamond or whatever, right? So don't include stuff like this. I was hoping when I first saw this that this would actually break down the process that this person used in this project, but seeing that there was the identical image on this other project immediately made me lose hope. Again, you also want your portfolio to be navigable. I need to be able to, as a hiring manager, I want to be able to quickly jump back and forth between projects like I just did, because now I'm learning something. If you have like a PDF of a portfolio, it's really hard to navigate between all those things because I can't just like go back, click on something, go forward, click on something, right? So a website is pretty optimal in my opinion. All right, I'm going to keep going here. So what's really interesting too is that how did we go from this like prompt to interaction design? Like you immediately went from here's the problem to here's like how the solution can interact. I don't understand. Was this an existing project? Yeah, so something's kind of missing here. I'm not sure what it is. These designs look pretty good, by the way. You've got like select states. The contrast is a little off on these, but that's fine. It looks like the spacing here is pretty poor. It's a material app, I can tell based on the navigation. Yeah, looks kind of like a student-based LinkedIn experience here. That's pretty cool. Okay, but now we're like backtracking, right? We're going to initial thinking. So this is something about, okay, design preview. I totally skipped this text, by the way. I don't know if anyone else watching this skipped it as well, but I totally missed the fact that this is a preview of the work to come. So instead of saying interaction design, I would expect this big headline to be something like the final solution or whatever I ended up, like a preview, a taste, right? Otherwise, I just assumed that your story starts with the end, when clearly it doesn't. Then you've got background research. You've got some research goals, survey responses. Nice chart. I'm curious where that's from. Some big numbers. That's cool. A lot of research. An affinity diagram. It's kind of a joke in the hiring manager world when we see screens or photos of sticky notes on a wall. That's not to say they're bad. In fact, I think this looks like a great screenshot photo. Looks like a really promising kind of breakdown of understanding user needs. The problem is that many users or many designers just tend to say like, oh, I have to have a photo of sticky notes on a wall. It's what we learned in school or something. And so it's like a cliche to see these in portfolio case studies. And then we've got a problem statement. Okay, so I'm going to stop looking through this. I'll look at the images here in a second. But I want to call out what I've been noticing pretty consistently here, which is I'm not learning about you in this story. I don't even think, do you even use the word I? Like, this isn't a story of discovery. It's not how you approached this challenge and what you learned and how you swayed the collaborators or how you were swayed by them. It doesn't talk to me about how you worked with a more senior designer to do these things or how you guided more junior designers. It doesn't tell me anything about how you decided to do an affinity diagram. It doesn't tell me how you decided to do this research. Like, just go straight into research goals. Like, where did these goals come from? If you were given the goals, that's totally okay. That's fine. But I need to know, as someone looking at your case study, if you're capable of coming up with research goals or if you're capable of managing when goals are handed to you. Like, that's the interesting stuff. And I don't see any of it here. So your visuals look pretty good. Here are those research screenshots that I was mentioning a little bit ago. I love to see real photos. They're microscopic here though. I want to see them big. Celebrate the fact that you did this research. But again, I just don't know you. I don't feel like this case study is telling me anything about how you solve problems. Now this is interesting. What is the most efficient digital platform? A mobile application. I don't understand what this section is. Is this like are you answering this question? If so, like, I would love to hear just you talk about your personal experience with this question, because it's a cool question. And this is more of what I want to hear of throughout your case study. Why is this mobile most important for this app? How did you decide on that? Okay, then we go into wireframes. Again, how did you decide to start with wireframes? Were there existing components you were using? Did you sketch it in something else? Like, I would like to see it. I'd also like to be able to click on these and see them much larger. These are really tiny. I can't see the details that are even pointing to here, so I need to see them big. One of the simplest solutions for this, by the way, is what I do in my own website. Make it so that if I click on an image, it just opens in a new tab at full size. Problem solved. In fact, I wonder if I can just even manually do this. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger by opening the image in a new tab. So that's an easy way to magnify your images, by the way. Just make them clickable, make them open in a new window, and please make sure that they're big, like as big as you can make them, because I want to see these design details. You know, this is the stuff that hiring managers and recruiters will often look at. Got a visual identity, like how did you decide on that? What were you trying to convey? You're using the Android default material typography. Why? It's missing style, like text height, it's missing line height, it's missing kerning, those kind of things. You've got final design, but here again, it's like this nice little Chrome, beautifully presented, but I'm not hiring someone to present their designs beautifully, I'm hiring someone to solve problems with design. So let me see these things much, much bigger, right? So you'll start seeing a lot of these consistent kind of issues. This section is really cool too. At the very bottom, you've got like the feedback from some pretty important people at this school, but they're at the bottom. It doesn't really talk about, what you did, why your efforts meet the diverse needs of students. So I would figure out how to call attention to these things. I love the fact that there's suggestions too. Make these big, bold quotes. Maybe sprinkle some of these quotes throughout the story and reflect back on them. So I'm stopping to read this section because here's like, finally I get your story. Finally, I hear about you. So again, I think this is a good case study. It's pretty clear that you kind of whipped it up fairly quickly. It's not bad by any means, but you could really stand out and strengthen this case study by just telling me your story. That's what we're looking for. MT has a question in the chat. What about including Figma files or prototypes? Do you think that would be valuable? Yeah. A link to a Figma prototype, embedding a Figma prototype is totally fine, really good. In fact, I think having that is better than having like a video or animated GIF, because now I, as the person viewing your portfolio, can click through the interaction and experience it. The one problem I've seen for Figma prototypes being embedded or shared, or in some cases designers using Figma as their prototype, is that Figma can be very slow and it doesn't always work on everyone's browsers. I had someone send me a portfolio a while back asking for feedback. It was a Figma prototype and it never loaded for me. It was such a large file. I couldn't give them feedback because it just never worked. So yes, you can include those things. Make sure they work on many browsers. Make sure that you have clear direction if they're a prototype that someone needs to click through, all those kind of things. Brandon, share your portfolio here if you don't mind. Oh, never mind. You tweeted it. I'm on it. Okay, let me pull this up. Thanks for sharing your portfolio, Brandon. So we've got Brandon's portfolio here, Brandon Hollins. I'm going to click. This is the homepage, but it kind of threw me off because there was not an introduction. That's like the first portfolio I've seen that doesn't have this introduction. Okay. Again, the problem with not having an introduction of any kind here is the same kind of problem you can kind of see here where the tab name is home and then your name. That's great. I love the repetition of your name, but what do you do? If I'm a hiring manager looking for a visual designer, am I supposed to assume that you're going to want those kind of jobs? Or are you a product designer? Are you a UX designer, a marketing designer, comms designer? Tell me something, right? And the reason you want to do that is so you can align with the people who are hiring. So go look at the job posts that you see out there, read through a dozen of them, see what language they use, see what title they use, see what experience you have, if any, and kind of the direction you want to go in your career, and just state that up here. Brandon Hollins, product designer. That'd be perfect. If you want to include an about statement, again, I think that can help. It gives us a little primer into who you are and what you care about. M1 finance internship, improving the M1 dividend experience by breaking down. So I don't have any idea what this means. I would say if you can, maybe reflect a little bit more on what kind of you got out of the experience again, your personal perspective of this, and then you can talk to that here. What was hard for you? What was challenging? What was exciting? You can say that here. This is an interesting prompt. Again, I would love to hear your personal perspective on this, Brendan. Just like why as a hiring manager or a recruiter, why do I want to click into this? What am I going to learn about you from this project? What's really interesting too is this like a black background? I can't tell. We've got like these nice colorful backgrounds here, and this one randomly is black. And then this one's like, this isn't even your work. This is a blog post. I would call that out here more vividly. Maybe just start this headline with blog post or article or whatever you want to call it. Because it's not your work, right? Like you didn't work on the Dune movie, I'm assuming. So don't do that. This is a fun little blurb down at the bottom that says you want to connect with other designers. but the way you approach it is by speaking as if they're design wizards. So like it's very extra party member. It's very D&D, which is in these days. So that's cool. Gives us a little taste of your personality. I will say, small thing, Brandon, but like your typography is just killing me. All caps, and then like you've got links that are not. So I would adjust that font if I were you a little bit. Don't get rid of your personality, and it's kind of hard to read. Okay, let's dive into a project. I'm gonna just go on the first one. I love that little transition, that little animation. That was really fun. It's like an interaction experience. I don't know if you intentionally built that, but it's fun to see the navigation swipe in like that. Be careful with animations on websites and portfolios because they can slow down the experience. And if I'm a hiring manager looking at 100 resumes today or portfolios, anything that's going to take up time, it's like, I can't do it, right? Okay, so you've got this big header image, totally fine. Again, I don't know what this project is yet, but it's something to do with stocks. I'm looking at the design details in this big image. I'm glad this is a big image, by the way, because now I can see some of the decisions that you've made. Things around like the color that you're using here. I'm not sure why this navigation bar, this tab bar turns blue on the screen, or if that was intentional. Looking at things like the button corner radii and how that matches these avatars over here. Okay, let's dive into the project. Okay, finance internship. So this is the first time I've seen the word internship, I think, for this project. Oh no, okay, I didn't read here. Never mind. Okay, so again, please get rid of like the team here where you're listing out the web engineers that you worked with, the engineer, the product manager. It's cool that you're linking to them, rah team, but no, I'm not here to interview your team. I don't want to talk about your team. Maybe in later interview stages, I will want to back channel and talk to them and hear about their experience working with you. But when I'm looking at your portfolio, I want to know about you. Keep it focused. Get rid of this stuff. It's not helping you, I promise. Instead, get to the story. Make me interested in learning more, right? And then you go right away to a video. Let me see this. Shows a menu. Oh, did you click that? That was weird. It like switched when you hovered over it. And you're down here all of a sudden. So I don't really know what this is. It's in some kind of tablet. So I don't know what this is or why it's up here. I thought that this was the intro. I thought this was like the priming for the project. I don't know what this is, so maybe move that. Okay, now you get into improving this experience. You explain what the thing is. It's an investment platform that provides all these services. And then here's this little blurb about what you were focusing on for this project. And that again, that's what I care about. So something you could do here is, Brandon, find a way to pull this little blurb out, add your personal touch, and separate this contextual information. This contextual information is like the right amount. I think if you are going to include some information on like a business no one's ever heard of or they're not familiar with, this context can help, but pull it out because more often than not, it's going to be skimmed. It's going to be overlooked. I just don't have the time or interest to learn about this other platform or business, right? I want to learn about you and your experience. So that's where the second part comes into play. And you can reword it to really make it focus on you. You and the team were focused on improving 3 areas. I'm really hopeful that what I read next is more about your context in this scenario. Were you familiar with the business at this point? Did you have to onboard quickly? Have you worked with like finance apps in the past? If not, how did you feel going into this project? Because that's going to set you up in your story for everything else that comes. And it's going to tell me again, well, what happens if I hire you to a new industry? Can you ramp up successfully? You can tell me that, right? Through your case study. You talk about target user. This only matters if you can tell me how you came up with that target user. Like, did you go talk to the product manager? See, now we're pulling that product manager. You can remove them from the team section. Instead, just talk about them. Did you work with the project manager to identify the target user? Was it already defined for you? How did you identify that? Tell me about you and your experience. I actually don't care about the user at all. I care about you. How did you learn that thing? Then the problem, again, same thing here. How did you know that was a problem? Tell me about it. Did someone tell you in the company? Was it like customer feedback was pretty overwhelming? Did you have the idea yourself? Current state. the feature is missing. I think this whole section could probably go because it should be part of the problem, right? Okay, I'm going to kind of look through here, get rid of this desktop Mac that's around your design. Let me just see the design. But again, also like you went from, oh, I see, this is the current state. Okay, see, I didn't associate this headline with this image. And this goes into what I was saying as well a little bit ago, where if you have images of other people's work, which I'm assuming you didn't work on this current state or previous state, I guess, it's really challenging because as a hiring manager recruiter, I'm going to assume this is your work. Like maybe I don't read any of this and I just look at this image and I'm going to be like, okay, interesting that you made these decisions when you didn't make those decisions. So I would recommend not including it, or if you're going to include it, add a huge label, like even on top of the image or something, saying not my work, previous work or something. Like you want your portfolio to be as much your work as possible. I'll just be honest, I'm not gonna read any of this text. I don't care. You're talking a lot about the business and stuff, and again, I'm here to learn about you, and I'm just not learning about you yet. And then this seems to be the final designs again. So you kind of shared how you want to measure success and things. Hey, see you later, Christina. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully I can see you later. So Brandon, like again, you go straight to the design here. Let me see. Okay, I think I broke it because now these things aren't loading. I'm assuming there's supposed to be images here. You talk a little bit about the specific things that you kind of designed. Okay, you're like talking up the features of the app. That's cool. The original designs, rest in peace. Hilarious title. It feels a little fragmented on your portfolio. And then yeah, horizontal scroll. Like please don't use horizontal scroll. Just show me a grid of your images. Get rid of this iPhone if you can. Just show me a grid of your work. Let me click into it. That's the stuff that I really want to see. Users were disappointed. So this is really interesting. Brandon, I started reading this, and one thing that really stood out to me is it feels a little negative. So you say the company didn't share any proprietary metrics with me. I get that's a reality. That's the real situation that happened. And it's really interesting because what you did is you said, with that constraint, I was proactive and I checked Reddit for user feedback. That's awesome. I would reword this didn't share any proprietary metrics with me, just to say something like, for privacy reasons or security reasons, I couldn't get access to these original metrics. Don't like point a finger at the company and say they wouldn't share with me, which is how I read that, right? But the proactive part of this statement is really, really cool. I would even reword this headline from users were disappointed to be something like conducting tertiary research or secondary research, scrappy or something, right? Like tell me again about you, because this is really interesting, Brandon. The fact that you took this step, it's a really small thing, but this is exactly what someone wants to see when they're reading a case study. What did you do when the going got tough? This is an example of that, really cool. And then my next question for this will be, well, what did you do after this, right? You got this feedback. Did you present it to the company? Did you feel frustrated by it? What did you do with it? And then you got some future plans. Okay, so again, you're going to see this commonality, I think, in all the portfolios that we talk about today, where I want to hear about you and your journey. I don't really care too much about the business. I do need some context, but ultimately, I think when recruiters or hiring managers are, when they're looking at your portfolio, they want to be able to assess the business that you were solving, the problem you were solving, by looking at the work, by going through your journey. So treat your case studies as if you were talking to a friend. What are you going to tell them? How are you going to talk to them about the project? What was hard? Where did it get started? How did it end? Were you happy with its ending? Whatever comes to mind around those things, like your journey is what we want to hear. Okay, I'm going to go through maybe one more case study for Brandon here. And Brandon, let me know if you have questions or insights or anything that you want to focus in on. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. So this one's called Insight. Insight. I don't know what that means. Why is it called Insight? Focus again on yourself more here if you can. Get rid of this section. Okay, designing a news experience to reduce time consumption. Wow, that is interesting. I say that's interesting because like that seems like a real timely world need right now. Again, I want to know though, like I don't care about the product. I'm sorry. Unless this is your personal project, your personal app that you built, in which case you should treat it as such. Tell me about your experience here. Like this headline should be something about your journey in this project. And that's going to help me as a hiring manager understand what I can pay attention to and what I'm going to learn about you as a result of this case study. I don't care about the business. I'm sorry. Maybe you love it. Maybe you had a great time and I hope you did, but it's like, I'm not going to read any of this. I don't know if anyone will. Yeah. So again, like, oh, this was interesting. Something about your hierarchy of information here, your layout, your structure here seems a little off, Brandon. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't seem like a super linear flow telling me your journey. And maybe that's just how it's worded. Maybe it's me reading a little bit too much into it in one way or another. But again, I want to follow a story. I want to read a story about you and your experience with this project. So tell me how it started for you. And tell me what you did first, and then go through the narrative. Like it seems like you jumped straight to the end here with this statement on, I would have focused on user acquisition, conversion, retention if this were to ship. But like, I haven't even started to learn about the product yet. I didn't even know it didn't ship. What happened, right? That should be at the bottom, I think. So again, figure out that story, get rid of this stock art stuff. Unless you took these photos, and it's photos of you with your team or something, or students, it just doesn't matter. Good analysis here of competitors. I like that I can click into these screenshots, but I'm confused why I can't click into yours. Am I imagining that? Yeah, like these ones are in another H scroll. So like I want to see your designs, but you've put them behind a thing I can't click. Oh, here we go. So some of them are clickable. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's great that you did some level of competitive analysis. I would want to really understand. Again, here, you're talking about to gain an understanding of the problem space. Had you worked in this space before? What was interesting about these sources? How did you pick these sources? You don't have to answer any of these questions. But if you don't want to answer them, it makes me question why this is a section on your portfolio. So either get rid of the section or elaborate on your personal experience here. Why did you decide these things should be like evaluated? Did someone tell you to do that? How did you decide? Tell me your story, right? The thing with these headlines too is you've got some really witty headlines in here, which I'm kind of enjoying, but they don't really help me quickly assess each of these sections. And it feels almost like, I don't know, it's just a little bit overkill. Like personalized onboarding is interesting. That's an interesting headline. But why did you decide to do personal onboarding? That'd be a better headline. Like, what is that unlocking for users? Or how did you decide to do that? Was this something you'd never done before? Again, I keep coming back to these questions because that's the stuff I want to see. Hey, Joey. Insights, your daily new playlist. Why does that matter? Where are your sketches for this stuff? It seems like you went from competitive analysis straight to solutions. Oh, here we go. Now there's, again, like I said earlier, it seems like your ordering's a little off here. I would, again, step back and say, how would I tell this story to a friend? I don't think you'd bounce around as much. You'd probably start at the beginning, talk about some of the things you did, and then get toward the end state. But it seems like your story here is a little bit all over the place. You're using your headline font on your portfolio for these quotes. Now I'm confused. Are these headlines or are these testimonials, pull quotes? I think they're supposed to be pull quotes, but they look very similar to headlines, so work on that. So yeah, Brandon, I think the biggest thing for you is coming back to that story. And then I do want to see more of the interstitial steps that you took. I'm not really sure how to read this case study because it feels like you're kind of presenting things and then going back to how they came about. But I just want to see a linear story. I want to see more of these screens. Get rid of this H scroll if you can. Show me more wireframes. Show me how you went from this decision to this decision, anything like that. Yeah, so there's a comment in chat where MT says, I think a lot of people feel a bit confused about how to approach storytelling because most examples of portfolios are so heavy with never-ending process that it becomes the norm. I agree. And process isn't a bad thing to talk about. I think if you want to stand out today, if you want to have a really compelling and interesting portfolio of work, if you really want to excite people who are coming to your portfolio and make them want to talk to you about a potential job or something, tell your story. It's going to make their day because they won't be bored with the same generic fluff. They'll get to learn about you in a stronger way. And hopefully you'll have more fun with it too, because instead of saying like, I need to check the box, I need to make sure I have this journey map, I need to go create that. Instead of doing that, you can just say, well, what really happened? And what artifacts do I have to show that? I'm going to tell that story. That'll be much, much more helpful. Okay, let me pull up, I think, another case study here. Thanks for sharing, Brandon. Hopefully some of that was helpful for you. If you have any other questions, let me know, please. But we've got one other resume here. Robin, you shared yours, so let me pull it up here. Thanks everybody for sharing. I know sharing your portfolio can be really scary, especially in a live format. But I do think it's powerful. It can really help you, hopefully, and help many others. Okay, Robin, thanks for sharing. So, hey there, I'm Robin, user experience designer based in Portland, Oregon, with a background in industrial design and information systems. This is a pretty good opener, I think. You very clearly tell me who you are, what kind of job you're into. You tell me where you're located, which if you're looking for a job is fantastic. If I'm not in Oregon, I'll be questioning if you want to be remote. You tell me a little bit about your background. I think what's interesting about your background, Robin, is can you tell me about how that applies to your role as a user experience designer? It's great that you have this interesting background, but I don't care really unless you can connect the dots for me. See what I did there? You like to connect the dots and provide thoughtful design solutions. So again, this is the most common thing I see, and I do think it's really hard. So Robin, I will say for yours, I personally liked it. I think you're pretty clear here. But if you want to elaborate, if you want to talk about how your background is related to your current kind of pursuits, if you want to give more concrete example of how you connect dots, like what do you do to enable that, I think that would make this even stronger. But you have to be careful with not overwhelming with too much content here. But that's the kind of question that I'm immediately going to have as a hiring manager or recruiter, is saying, well, this doesn't tell me how you do that or why you do that or anything like that. I love that you are asked for memes to an open email address. Yikes. I don't know the last time I saw an open email address on the web, but I hope your spam folder is okay. You've got links to social channels here. Fantastic. Seriously, Robin. Too many designers don't include links to other places, but as a hiring manager, one thing I love to do is I get an understanding for the designer on their portfolio, and then I'll go check out their other stuff. I'm not stalking them. I'm not trying to get inside information, but I want to understand if they talk about themselves in consistent ways. Like, is this really who they are? If you say user experience designer, but I open up your LinkedIn and your title's not that, you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. So, make sure those things are similar and link to them if you can, if you feel comfortable doing that. I want to be really clear on this point, actually. I do not think you have to include social channels on your portfolio or resume. You do not need to do that. But as a hiring manager, I always appreciate when a designer does that. When they give me the opportunity to learn more about them authentically, big plus on that. Okay, I'm excited to dive in, Robin. I think this is already a great start. You've got some featured UX projects, Apple Watch activity tracking, customizing linear user experience by adding an activity feature that reflects their schedule. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that is, but that's interesting. You got this little animation here, which is it's interesting. It's a little surprising though. I know it's trying to convey this is clickable. I'd try to be more explicit with that though, by having a button or having this outline, something that says this whole section is what you're clicking on. Don't read too much in that. Housemate. Okay, interesting. Ooh, I love this concept of housemate, so I might look into that one. I think like visually, just because you're using iOS norms here or watchOS norms here, this one stands out to me. But I might click into this one with the subject. And then, okay, cool. I like this little confetti thing at the bottom. I want to call this out though. If you didn't make these confetti items, don't include them, or make your own, right? Replace them with something of your own, because everything I see on your portfolio, I'm going to assume you made. If you made these, really cool. I love it. Nice detail. All right, let's dive into this middle project here. Okay, so it says, ooh, first of all, your designs up here are tiny. Robin, what is happening? Please be proud of your work. Let me see it. Make them shine. Big, big, big. Okay, productivity meets wellness. Creating an end-to-end household management app for roommates with a focus on strengthening relationships. Okay, it's not terrible. You're being very explicit. It's the same feedback I've given the last few portfolios though. Tell me about your experience designing this. Summarize what it was like for you. What happened that as I go through this case study, like what can I expect to learn about you? Is this the time that you learned to collaborate really well? Is this the time you had to do research for the first time, or what was it, right? And then get rid of this project info stuff. Again, if you use Figma, mention how you used Figma in your story. Show me screenshots. Notion, I want to hear how you use that. Just listing stuff out doesn't tell me how you used it. Also, I don't know if anyone can hear, but my dog is snoring behind me. So if you hear like that snoring, that's what that is. It's not me, I promise. Okay, awesome. Look at this. Look, there's real photos of research. Amazing. I love it. Fantastic. Yes, this is more of what we need. Real authentic photos of experience. Super cool. Okay. So you've got this like brief overview. 2012. That was a while ago. For industrial design. Okay, I see. So here's the real crux, right? To challenge yourself, you decided to create a mobile app. So this is good. I think you're starting this really strong with a personal narrative. You're telling me a little bit of background and kind of what you set out to do. You might want to clean this up just a tiny bit. And what I mean by that is like, I don't know if you need to include all this context necessarily. Like this middle part, you can probably cut out and just get to like, look, I started this project here and later I decided to make the app. So you can clean that up a little bit, and that'll be much more easier to kind of pursue. Great headline solution preview. This gives us a preview of the work. Fairly big, so it's good. Okay, I'm just kind of looking at some of the design details here, seeing what you have. So this is I'll just be honest, Robin. This is the kind of stuff that I think design hiring managers will often look at, is some of the craft decisions right away. So one of the things that stands out to me is like you're using this light green outline state for these cards here, which is also the same as what you're using for what appears to be a secondary button. But then, so I would assume these are clickable like buttons, right? They look like buttons, but then you've also got like this selected state. So these aren't really buttons. So it's interesting to me that you made this decision to use something that looks like a secondary button, but acts differently. It's not a big deal. It's just the kind of detail that someone might look into. And then similarly, another kind of detail is looking at the font weight of some of these icons, and the font weight here looks a little bit different, especially with like the buttons. So again, none of these things are bad, but these are the types of details that someone might look into. All right, let's dive in. Roommates revealed. The assumed problem. Picking up where I left off from school, which I assumed. Okay, this is a good story. This is a great story already. Like I'm super interested in hearing about it. Like you had an assumption, right? And then you discover that's not the case. This is fantastic. Robin, I would say kill this, all of this up here. Get rid of all of this. Project info and overview. Get rid of it. Start right here. Maybe reword this part to include some of that other context, because I think that is helpful. But this is such a great introduction. If this is the first thing I read on a portfolio case study, I'd be like, okay, this person is self-aware. They had a challenging situation. They're talking about a really interesting story, right? The reason this works for me as a hiring manager is because I want to know what you learned. Again, when I think about case studies in a portfolio, it's a journey of discovery. It's a journey of discovery. And this tells me right away, how did you cope with learning that your assumptions were wrong? Like, let's find out. I want to know, right? What did you learn and why were they wrong? Okay. You talk a little bit here about doing some research. Again, I want to see some photos. I want to see something here. It can be sketches, it can be notes, it can be a table of data. Show me what this research looked like for you, and tell me why, again, you did these research, this specific type of research. Like, how did you decide to do these interviews, and why 6 people? Why, like, where? I'm not sure how you landed on these criteria, and I would love to know. I think that's the kind of detail that matters the most. And then you can take out this bolded overwhelming response, and maybe find a way to visualize this, right? So what I mean by that is you've gotten out another chore app, you've done some research. Can you just show me a big screenshot of what that looks like today? Like, what are those chore apps like? And if this was the response, technology wasn't working for them. Okay. Like, just show me visually what that means. I can't really understand it. I'm not in the market. I don't understand. Did you do competitor research as part of this analysis? Show me something. Visualize this for me, right? Because what's going to happen is I may skim through this narrative. I'm going to just, stop reading at this point, and then I'm going to skip all this stuff. I just don't have time to read it all. So try to be a little bit clearer with that stuff. Visualize it if you can. The experts agree. I'm not sure about this. Okay, this is awesome. Secondary research. Robin, this is a fantastic story. I'm learning so much about you. You clearly say, here's why I did this. This is great. My only problem with this, of course, is that, like, this is a photo. It looks like you're also, I don't know where these images, oh, here we go. Robin, you're crushing this. You explicitly call out where you got these images. I was going to say, are these Notion images? But my only problem with this is, like, I can't select the text, which, it's not a big thing, but, like, if we think about how someone might look at this on, like, a mobile phone, now it's impossible to see. Like, got to pinch and zoom or something. So maybe change up that format a little bit. I also don't think you need the full quotes here, Robin. Focus on the 1 or 2 sentences that really stand out to you, that really impacted your work. And just show those here. We don't need the full quotes, I promise. Then you move into persona. So I'm just reading a little bit here. This is, Robin, you crushed this. You explain why you're building a persona, right? It's to focus your kind of effort. So I would even call that out more. And then, like, I don't know. We'll see. The interesting thing about personas is if you're going to mention them in your persona, if you actually use them, please make sure you're referring back to them later on in your case study. Because if you just say, like, I built a persona, but you never point back to them and tell their story, it's just, you're checking a box that doesn't matter. Then you've got research here. Okay. This is, I keep saying it, this is really good though. Again, I want to see more visuals with these things. Like, what is poor communication? What are shared tools, better habits? What do these things look like in practice? Help me empathize with the user. Help me understand how you understood these problems. Because it's great that you wrote them out, but did you have examples? Were there specific stories that the users told you? And then there's a pivot. Okay, why? This headline is interesting. You may want to change this to be something a little bit more captivating. I'm not sure what that would look like though right now, so maybe let's come back to that. Maybe this is fine. So here is an interesting thing that I think I'm noticing throughout this whole case study, Robin, which is you're providing a ton of really good context. You have that very personal lens. I appreciate that a lot. You're giving me your rationale for decisions. Fantastic. But it's very, very wordy. which is the challenge, right? So, for example, I don't think you need this headline or this headline or this headline. I think you just say, look, I discovered at this point in the story, I discovered that my assumption was wrong, or that the research indicated something that was surprising to me. You don't need anything else. Just this one sentence here is enough. Get rid of the solution headline. Just say, I discovered roommates often don't feel respected, ... And then say, I wanted to reassess some of the research that I had and my assumptions in order to kind of meet that need. So I think you can get rid of a lot of these headlines and things and just tell me that story. It's going to maybe feel a little confusing at first, but I promise you, if someone's just reading this like a blog post, they're going to love it. It's going to be really clear to them. It's going to be exciting to follow along, and it won't feel like they have to kind of skip sections because it's just too much text. If that makes sense. Okay. So now you've done all your research. You've got this massive section on assessing the research. That's really great. And now you've got some low fidelity sketch, mid fidelity. Did you only do these sketches, or are there a lot more? Because if you only did one, that's okay. What about mid fidelity? Like, can we see a bunch of those screens? I'm assuming you didn't do one and call it good, right? Let's find out. So you mapped it out. Yeah, man, Robin, I don't know where you learned to do this, but this is fantastic. I needed to understand how those tasks would interact, so I created a simple sitemap. Yes, that's why we create sitemaps, right? And you're clearly articulating that. And then you make a decision based on that sitemap. Fantastic. Now you're telling me like which tabs you wanted to go to and how connected they were and what they contained. This is great. This is exactly what I want to see. Branding with wellness. I'll be honest, I don't care too much about this kind of stuff when it comes to case studies. If this was really important to you, I think what's going to matter to me is understanding why you did it at this stage. Because I see some of your rationale here for the colors and things, but I don't know why you decided to go from a sitemap to branding. So elaborate on that for me, if you will. Let's test this idea. You don't need that. Again, you don't need these headlines. I really think you can just have a story, Robin, and it would be compelling enough where you don't need any headlines. If you feel like you need to have headlines, I'd make them maybe a pull out from kind of your primary thing here. So like, this could just be first testing mid-fire wireframes, right? So just that redundancy will help me a little bit clearer than just this. But I don't think you need this, honestly. Because what your story will do is we'll just say like, look, I did all this stuff and then I needed to validate. So I think that's good. Let's see here. 2 rounds of testing. Again, the same question I always have is like, how did you decide for 6 users? How did you source them? If you're going to talk about research, I want to understand a little bit more. It's okay if you had help. In fact, that's even better. Tell me about that help that you had. Interesting that you did this like Instagram ad to test it. One thing that I would say here too is like, can you better convey that? I'm assuming this is the Instagram ad. Can you better convey this is on Instagram? Like add an app icon or some of the Chrome, some of the like the Instagram UI or something to help me understand that. Because if I don't read this text and I don't read this text, if I'm just slow on time, you can help give me better context here right away in the image by just like saying, this is Instagram, this is an ad. It goes right to the app, right? These are cool research findings. I don't know how much this additional text helps me. Like if you just say research showed that was valuable and the concept was easily understood, that's great. Okay. So it feels like you kind of lost me here on the end, Robin, in that you were telling me this great story about your experience and how you made decisions. And then you switch to talking about the app, almost like in a sales pitch, which is fine. But again, I want to know like how you felt at this stage as you came up with the final solution. Were you feeling confident? Was there something that you felt like not great about? Were there decisions that you had to go quickly on that you couldn't just kind of manage? Like, tell me more about that, I do like it when there's like a summary or reflection section at the bottom of a case study. It's pretty nice to have that. But what I will also say is make sure you're sprinkling your story. Sprinkle your story with some of these details as well. Yeah, Robin, this is a fantastic case study. Oh, I love it. And a quote at the bottom. Okay, let's see another one because I really want to see what else is going on here. Okay. Again, I'm just going to say it. Tell me what I'm going to get out of this experience by learning about you. Don't tell me about the product or the app. I want to hear about you. Make your images really big. This makes me sad when I see this part up here, Robin. You can make them bigger. Get rid of all this section. I'm calling it right now. You don't need any of this. Get rid of all this. Before and after is okay. I'll come back to that in a second because I want to go find where your story actually starts. Oh my gosh, this is scrollable. Okay, we gotta come back to that too. Okay. Maybe your story is not as great here. So I don't know. Let me see. Let me come back up here. So, so what I'm understanding here is that this was my interpretation, my first response looking at this case study is that you did this unsolicited, unasked, you didn't work for the company. I don't know if that's true. Maybe as we go through this, we'll understand that. But if that's the case, you need to be really careful here. The reason unsolicited redesigns are dangerous in portfolios, in my opinion, is that the context, the team, the research, it's never realistic, right? It's you and a friend decided to do this. It's you broke whatever design system the company may or may not have. You went against any contextual business constraints or priorities in the business might have, and you kind of made up your own, right? So again, I don't know if that's the case here. Maybe we'll find out. If you don't have a lot of work and you just want to show this anyway, you need to have big red letters at the top that say like, this is a fabrication. This is not real. This is a fun project that I wanted to try. That's okay. If you feel like you want to do that, you can do that, but you need to make it really clear that you did not work for this company, because my assumption coming in is going to be that you did, right? And if I, for whatever reason, learn that you didn't, I'm going to feel like you lied to me. I'm going to feel very betrayed. Even if you didn't mean to, even if it wasn't your intention, anytime you have fake work on your portfolio, it's going to be assumed that it's real work. And I see this all the time with designers who like redesign Facebook or design at Nike or something like that. And then you have a conversation, you realize they've had no experience. It's very misleading. It's very off-putting. It's much better to just be honest. Say, I wanted more work on my portfolio. I found this opportunity. I thought I'd take a stab at it. So just call it out in some way. Okay, big text, really clear. This is not a real project. This was for fun only. That's fine. And you can include it. You can absolutely include it. But just you need to make sure that you and the audience are aware that everything about the project is assumed. It's not real, which is not the best thing to do. If you're a designer looking for work early on in real work, please go find someone you can freelance with, get internships if you can. A community I often recommend is Indie Hackers. I think it's indiehackers.com. This is an excellent community of a bunch of typically engineers, software engineers who are trying to like build a business, and a lot of them need design help. And there are some instances where like you have this group called Partner Up over here on the right hand side, and sometimes they'll be looking for designers. You can even post in here like, hey, I'm a designer looking for work, and these people will want to partner with you. I'm not sure they'll be able to pay you very well, if at all, sometimes. But if you're looking for real work with a real person, this is a fantastic way to get more case studies. Okay, let me keep going for this case study for a second. So I was saying like get rid of this stuff to try to figure out the story, and then I realized the story is in this stuff, so maybe you can't kill it. But what you can do is chop this up a little bit. And so a trick that I like to use, I don't know if you've used this, Robin. Again, just want to be clear. I love your stories. I am so happy that I found your portfolio because you have a great narrative overall on these things. But put this into Grammarly, Grammarly.com. If you're not familiar, Grammarly.com. You don't need to download their extension. You don't need to pay for the thing. You can use their free account just on their website. That's what I do. Well, I'm paying, but I use their website. And just plug in your case study, copy and paste this in there. And it will tell you how to clean up your language a little bit, how to make it more concise, where you're being redundant, all those things. So please use Grammarly. I'm a major fan of Grammarly. I use it for everything I do. Check it out. that probably will be able to help you. So yeah, you can probably clean up the story again, get rid of all this stuff, especially since this is a fabricated case study. You don't need any of this stuff. And then let's dive into the story. So starting with a before and after is not a bad thing. I think that can help set the stage and immediately tell me as a hiring manager if I want to even read about this, right? If I want to look into it. So I'm going to kind of look here at what we've got. We've got this navigation, which looks like some pills, maybe a big photo, some like generic thing, chat, okay. And then we've got your after over here, which has a very similar, oh no, this is very different because this is like more search criteria, whereas this is navigation. So you change their navigation to search. It looks like navigation is now moved up here. That's really interesting. I'd be curious to understand why. I love that you put the dates out here. Common thing for travel websites, booking websites. Makes a lot of sense to me there. Then you've got these kind of, well, I can't actually tell what's going on here because you've got like what appears to be a card with information, but then you've got this other one. So I'm not sure what's happening there. And then further, you've got these other kind of what appears to be cards here, but they look very different than this side. Using this tab structure here, a lot of text. The layout is interesting. The kind of things, again, that as a hiring manager, I would look at are any kind of horizontal layout like that. Hey, Batman. Yeah, for sure. Get some rest. It's 1 a.m. where you're at. You got to get some rest. And yeah, we'll keep this video up for a while if you find it helpful. Okay, so what I was saying is as a hiring manager, again, I'm going to look at the details in these things. And I don't think there's really ever a detail I'll look at that I'll immediately be like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to interview you. But there are details that help me assess your level of experience as a designer. And one of the most obvious ones that I look at personally is horizontal layouts. So you've got like this date, duration, price per person section over here. I don't know if everyone can kind of see that. I can't zoom in either. And one of the things I always consider here is how will this scale? Because in some instances, this date might be longer, the time might be longer, and that pushes things horizontally. And then what happens if you change the layout of the device or the screen size? If you go to a smaller phone, like how are these items going to wrap? Because that text is going to have to break somewhere. And how does that change the layout, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I'll be looking at, really quickly trying to assess. That and similar things. So like you've got these pills, which appear to be toggleable, switches almost on off, Boolean states, but they match the style of your primary button. So they operate differently. So why are you treating them the same? Let me be really clear. I don't think you need to worry about these things. Don't go back in time and try to fix them or anything. Just know that these are the kind of things that someone's going to look at. And what you can do in some cases, as I mentioned very early on in the stream, is get ahead of those questions, get ahead of those concerns by calling out somewhere on your case study. Hey, like if I were to do this again, here are the things I would address. I would want to address the consistency of buttons. Great. You just solved all of my concerns as a hiring manager by addressing the details that you know I'll be looking at, right? So you can call those out proactively. The other thing is, man, Robin, I had no idea this was actually scrollable. There's nothing in this UI that conveys that. I think if I hadn't accidentally come down, put my cursor over it to scroll, I wouldn't have even known that was scrollable. So maybe, scroll through a few final screens. See, my interpretation of this headline would be just like scroll through them, meaning like scroll past them. Not actually, you can scroll them. So maybe work on a clear label, maybe style it different than these headlines, have a little texting down here that says like you can scroll inside each card. Or if I were you, consider finding a way to maybe record these scrolling as a video or an animation rather than giving the user the scroll ability. Like I'm not sure why me scrolling as a user is much better. Additionally, the big thing for me is like, okay, it's a preview. So you are calling out a preview, that's good. Again, I want to hear your story, your journey. If you're starting with the end in mind, that's fine. It's slightly strange here that you go from these like before and after straight to a preview. Like I expect one of these things to be at the bottom of your case study rather than both. Okay, I'm gonna keep going here. I'm ranting a little bit. So usability tests. Okay, this is cool. Tell me about this usability test though, right? Like who did you talk to? How did you find them? How did you do the research? Who did you do this study or the survey through? Was it like through Google Forms or something? Yeah, MT calls out a great comment here, which is like when I was mentioning the line breaks here for horizontal things. The moment an engineer gets a hand on this, they're going to say to you, well, what do you want me to do when the line breaks, right? They're going to say, should the text wrap over here? Should we move the layout so it stacks vertically? Like, what do you want me to do? And so, again, this is another reason why quote unquote fabricated projects are so challenging and not great to show, is because you don't have that real world constraint. You're not really putting it on a phone and saying, well, how does this break? This is one small example. There's many, many more. For example, like what happens if there's no results? Did you design those screens for a search? What happens if it's booked out? Did you design those? That's the kind of stuff that an engineer or a product manager will ask you in real time to try to understand. And when you have a fake project, no one's asking you that. No one's running through the bad scenarios. What happens when we have to translate our website into another language, like German? Now all of this breaks. It doesn't work at all. This text in German would probably like take up the entire screen. So that's the kind of stuff you have to think about. Over your career, you'll learn these things naturally. You'll start to understand like this layout is not the best for this format. It might look great how it's presented here, but this is perfection, right? This is perfectly designed. What happens if the boarding time is canceled or changed? Like what, you have to figure those things out, right? Okay, let's go back to the story here. So again, tell me more about these tests. It's awesome that you wanted to understand the experience better. Thank you so much for elaborating on that, but you really need to go into depth on how you decided on these methodologies and why. You've got some screens from the site usability assessment. Okay. I'm not really sure what these screens add, and the fact that it's like a large image of 4 screens, it's not super helpful. If you have photos of someone actually using this, that'd be better. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to show these kind of screens as is. I especially like this last one, which is like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a screenshot of a screenshot or someone actually trying to book, but that makes me sad. Okay, field study. Ethnic. Okay, this is cool. So one thing I want to do real quickly, like I mentioned at the very beginning of my stream, I love to be able to jump back and forth between things on a portfolio. So this is why I personally really believe in the portfolio website. Use Squarespace, use Dribbble, use whatever you can to build a website, because I want to be able to jump around and understand things. And so I'm seeing a lot of great research. I want to go home here and see what you call out research. So I don't see anything really here about research. And yet, with 2 case studies that I've looked at, Robin, you are very clearly passionate about using data to inform your design decisions. I think when you say like you connect dots and provide thoughtful design solutions, what you're really saying is I like to gather as much information as I can and then use that information to inform design decisions. You should say something about that here instead of what you have now, because that really ties in nicely with your case studies. It's going to create this holistic picture of who you are as a designer. It's going to be strong. It's going to be a strong statement, because not only will you say it here, but you have all the evidence to back it up. So yeah, I would try to encourage you to call out that research approach or that thoughtfulness a little bit more, because you're doing all this different research. I'm assuming. Again, the one thing I want clear here on is like, how did you decide to do these specific studies? How did you get participants? That stuff. Okay, here again, you've got a ton of text. Maybe find a way to trim some of this down a little bit. And then you've got a persona. And one thing I noted on the previous case study, the previous persona, is don't talk about a persona if you're not going to talk about the persona. So here, like it looks like you're using the persona again of Marley. Yeah, you keep that persona in mind again down here. But we're going to want to see more of that, right? As you get into higher fidelity, I need to hear more about that user experience and how you used that persona to inform your decisions. Because if you're not talking about that, you probably don't need to talk about the persona. Like, did it really help you that much? If not, that's okay. Get rid of it, or even be so bold as to come down here somewhere and say, I built a persona because I thought it would help, but it just really didn't. I didn't refer to it as much as I wanted to, or something. So you've got some filtering here. And one of the things I noticed right away is right here in this statement. After sketching some low fidelity ideas, I used mid fidelity wireframes to figure out the details. where are those low fidelity ideas? If you're going to mention them, can I see them? Is it just this? You did 3 variations? That's fine if so, but let's call out to that. Again, with the branding, like personally, I don't know. It's interesting that designers tend to do this like fun branding thing. In the real world, I don't think I've ever once thought about branding when designing a real product experience. Apart from using existing systems and existing branding, I've never like had to create new branding from scratch, unless I was building an entire new business or product. I don't know about this part. I'm gonna skip it. Maybe have another conversation with a different person, hiring manager or a more experienced designer than you, about whether or not you should include this stuff. If you're gonna be a brand designer, yes, this is what we want to see, but it just feels a little foreign to me personally. Okay, now we're going to wireframes. So I'm a little concerned about the story that just happened here, because you say here, after sketching some low fidelity ideas, I moved to mid fidelity. I guess these are the mid fidelity, right? Not the low fidelity. I don't know anymore. But then you suddenly go back to wireframes or sketches. Like, what I'm trying to say is, don't talk about or reference in visuals any of your steps out of order. It's just going to be really confusing. I think the one difference to that is like this opening screen, this like open image overview, where you can like show the final result, or something like this, like starting off with a before and after, or starting off with just the final result. That's fine. You're priming the audience. You're telling them very quickly whether or not they want to like read into it. But don't go back and forth, like showing, for example, down here, showing suddenly a sketch when I'm supposed to be looking at high fidelity wireframes or something. Like you're just confusing me. I'm not sure what your process looks like now. Do you suddenly go back and like shake things up for some reason? If that's really what happened, the one caveat, if that's really what happened, yeah, tell me that, show me that. But if it's not what happened, which I don't think it is here, don't suddenly like throw out sketches. I love that. Okay, so again, I think the problem or the challenge for you, Robin, on these case studies is being explicit and maybe cleaning up a little bit of the copy you have here, because I think a lot of stuff just won't matter. For you in particular, like these fun headlines, which I do like, I think they're pretty clear. I don't think you need them though. Like it's more junk for someone to have to mentally process or read. And it's like kind of redundant, right? You've got this big section header, and then you've got this other header, and I don't know which one I'm really supposed to pay attention to. I don't think you need these. I think you can do something, I hate to do it, but I'll reference myself again. I think, Robin, for you can do something like what I do in mine, where like you've got a headline, and don't read too much into mine. I'm not looking for jobs. I haven't customized mine. But essentially, like, see, there's no section headers between all my stuff. Like I'm telling a story, and I try to tell it in 1, 2, maybe 3 paragraphs as you go, and let the visuals kind of speak toward that stuff. The only time I have headlines in my case studies on my portfolio is when I'm talking about a different project inside of a company. Other than that, like, I don't use them. And I think you can do the same thing, Robin. I really do. I think you don't need any of these headlines. I think you just tell your story, because it's pretty interesting. And if you can clean it up just a little bit, find the areas where you don't need the copy, this is going to be a really nice portfolio in general. So consider getting rid of some of those things, cleaning up the content a little bit. If you can, get a few more images in there. Again, here, I'm assuming you've got the scroll thing, but not all of them are scrollable. So that's kind of weird. Maybe replace those with a video, animate GIF, a grid of images. You'll also have an H scroll here. I don't know. I would not recommend ever doing this. Looks like it loops as well. Please get rid of these H scrolls on your websites, everyone. They're terrible. Okay, then you've got a view prototype. This is huge. Like, I want to see a big image that I can click and check out what you've built. That's really cool. Let's take a look. Okay, loaded fast. I can see that I can, okay, this looks really great. I can even use the menu. Nice, slides down. I'm a little curious about the slide down animation, but I'm not gonna worry about that. I can buy tickets. Now, I'm curious about that too. Also, how do I go back? Okay, so I don't know how to go back on this experience. I think That's kind of broken. Yeah, some interesting things here with your prototype that I broke it. That you might want to like reconsider, or maybe you talk about in your case study. Like I feel really stuck on this page. I have no idea how to go back. If I were a real user, I mean, like I don't know how to go back to that nice screen I was just on. Okay, but that's cool. A link to a prototype, fantastic. You've got some reflections down here. Again, make sure these are very personal. Make sure they're relevant to the story you just told. If you have any visuals for these things, show them. Yeah, see, you say you were preoccupied with solving the booking process in a unique way. So, let's see some of those concepts. Let's see some of those notes you had. Tell me a little bit more about that stuff. Cool. All right, let me take a look at how we're doing. How's everybody doing? If you want to hang out, send me your portfolio. Here, we got a new one. Adele. Am I pronouncing your name, Adele? Let's check it out. Thanks for sending your portfolio. Okay, so we've got a really spicy portfolio here. And what I mean by that is like it's black. It's suddenly already different, right? It's got like this gradient behind this big beautiful text. You've got a logo. Yeah, let's see here. Okay, everything we interact with form is an experience. If it's built right, it will be memorable. Let me think about this for a second. Is this your quote, or is this from someone else? I'm not opposed to having something like this. It's a very like mission forward quote. It tells me kind of how you think about design. So I'm not opposed to this. I'm looking at this really tiny section beneath it though that says, "Hi, people call me Adele, an entry-level UX designer interested in building experiences that intersect business, technology, psychology, and design." Okay, so a few things on this subtext here. Let me try to zoom in a little bit. So the first thing is an entry-level UX designer. Great. Again, I mentioned this before. If you can make that a little bit larger, help me understand who you are as a designer and what kind of roles you're looking for, you're already getting on the same page as me, or not. If I'm not looking for an entry-level UX designer, let's not waste each other's time, right? It's not going to do me or you any good to hang out and let me look through your portfolio. So make that a little bit larger. And then the second thing you're saying here is, you're building experiences that intersect, I think there's a typo there, intersect businesses, technology, psychology, and design and human-centered approach. I don't know if you know this, but you're just describing design at this point. Like, design is all these things today. And so there's nothing really unique about that statement. What I would say is you can do something, if this is your quote, and I really don't know if it is, maybe we can just Google it real quickly, actually. Yeah, I don't see anything coming up. So I'm assuming that this is your quote, which is cool. If this is your quote, what I would say is maybe get rid of this entire bottom section here and just say, "Hi, I'm Adele, an entry-level UX designer who believes everything we interact with forms an experience," right? That's a little more personal. I like that a little bit better, and it gets rid of this section while still keeping the entry-level UX designer very apparent. So maybe consider doing that. I do like the black background, by the way. It's a little different, feels a little fresh. The contrast is really nice. Let's take a look at the work here. Conversational design, creating equity-focused and designing across platforms, the role stories play in the design process. That doesn't seem like a project. Let's see here. So I'm not really sure what these titles mean. The work is really, really tiny and not very explicit. Like a screen with blue. A screen. Yeah, so Adele says this is it. Inspired from Frank Chimero, who I love. I love Frank. Again, if this is not your quote, or if you feel like it's too close to something someone else said, please don't just steal it. That's not helping. Get rid of it. Come up with your own. Replace this text with this text a little bit cleaned up. Dive into more of what design means for you, and say here. You can, if it's a quote, you can keep it as a quote and just say like, I'm an entry-level UX designer, and here's something that I read once that I believe in, colon, and then quote, right, with a source. That could be good. But coming that back down to the work, like, it's really hard to see the details on this. A blue screen with text on it, you're not showing me anything impressive. This seems like an article with like an icon. I'm not sure about that. So I'm going to click into the one project that seems like it's a real project from what I can tell. The title is Conversational Design, and I don't know what that means. So you maybe want to retitle that. Let's dive in. Okay, so now I see up my page up here is called Emo. I don't know what that means. This is a case study. Cool. The contrast changed to white. I'm not sure if that's intentional. One thing that you need to keep in mind when designing anything really is stark contrast switches are jarring for users, right? They kind of upset the user because whether you're browsing the portfolio at night or in the day, it doesn't matter. Your eyes have to adjust to that contrast switch, and it can be really uncomfortable for many people. I'm pretty old. I'm getting older every day, and contrast switches they suck. They kind of hurt. So keep it one or the other. If you're going to make it switch for some reason, make sure you have a really good reason for that. And I'm not sure diving into a case study is a reason. So don't have it go from black to white. Don't do that, please. Here again, the context, personal, my role, get rid of that stuff. I think the personal context may be important, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But like this section is, you're wasting space. Multimodal device for kids. Okay, I'm interested in this. I'm particularly interested in this headline because I read this as you built a device, the hardware, when previously you said you're an entry-level UX designer. So I'm a little confused, and let's dig into it. Yeah, in the chat, he says zoom in a little bit. I mean, you got to keep that in mind, right? Like, people are going to be looking at this on many different browsers, different size windows, big and small. Some recruiters have really old monitors. Like, will it work on that? Sometimes as a hiring manager, my recruiter will send me a portfolio on my phone while I'm on getting groceries or something. And I just need a real quick glance at the portfolio, or I'll be entering a call with you and I'll need to pull it up on my phone. Make sure your portfolio works on all these things, which if you have the ability, build it yourself, whatever. If not, use Dribbble, use Behance, use Notion, use Wix, Squarespace, whatever you need, Webflow. Those can all help you. And I promise no one cares how you built your portfolio. What they care about is the work and the stories inside of it. So focus on that. Okay. I'm just going to keep the size that it is. Hopefully it's okay. This is a funny little screen. I kind of dig it though. It's got like this device that's really tiny. It shows that it's plugged in. So it's setting some context here, but I really hope we can get some better context here. Okay. Okay, this project starts with any other as a problem. We are in 22 in the race for technology innovations. Experience its peak. Digital products are growing. Nope, don't want to read this. I'm a little bored. Our problem is research had found that kids are growing up. Who's our? Did you work with someone on this? So honestly, I don't think you need any of this. I don't think this is super helpful context. If I'm a hiring manager looking at this, I'm not going to read any of that. This part, however, seems pretty pertinent. So I would just have that, the goal. The goal is project to design a product. That sounds good. I am curious about why you picked this particular project. I suspect that is answered in this, but there's no way I'm going to read that. That's way too much context. So a single sentence explaining why you picked this project would be helpful. You've got this like blurb here about the problem, I think. For what it's worth, these look like links because they're underlined. My assumption would be I could click on this and get like data that you used, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm not sure why you're coloring these or underlining them. Maybe clarify why you have this call out. Like, is this what you learned? Is this what you discovered? Like, what is this? I don't understand. I'm reading this a little bit here. So again, this is so interesting because you're giving a ton of context, but it might be a little too much. For example, in this section, again, I don't think you need any of this text. I think just saying, I wanted my product to address a really sensitive group of users who are curious and unpredictable is interesting. This other stuff it's too much background. It doesn't really tell me about you per se. You can say I referenced, a TED Talk. I thought I was inspired by a TED Talk, but I don't really need much more context than that, I think. And then you say like you're using a design framework by someone else. That's scary to read. It's scary to read because I don't want to know that you like handpicked a framework to approach. I want to know what really happened throughout your work. I'm not sure this is really additive for anyone. Maybe your situation, but I'm not sure. Let's keep going. Yeah. This is where I wish the entire case study started. Looks like we're almost a quarter down your page, and now we're getting to the work. Like that's too much. You gotta clean that up a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So you're just diving into a diagram you created in survey. It's the same advice I gave the last few portfolios. Why? Why did you start with this? I get like it's a great tool, but why did you decide to start with it? Have you done them before? Was it a new experience for you? What did you learn by building it? Not what did you learn about the project, the problem, but what did you learn about building these kind of diagrams? Same thing with a survey. How did you decide on 2 questions? That seems like a surprisingly low amount of questions. So how did you decide on that? And how did you get participants in that study? How many people ended up participating? Tell me about you and your decisions here. Yeah, this is really tough, to be honest. I think that you're trying a lot of things here, but it's very evident that this isn't a real project, and I think that's challenging. Like, it's never helpful to conduct surveys with your social circle, your peer group. Like your peer group is never going to be the customer that you're designing for. They're never really going to represent who's out there. Like no matter what. When I worked at Facebook, like we didn't go conduct research with other Facebookers. We had to go out into the world and find people who had never used Facebook before, which, when you have the whole world at the time using the product, it can be really hard. So that's kind of a red flag for me. And then you're doing more research. This is great. But you're watching your kids. Okay, your sister's kid. That's reasonable. That's okay. And you're kind of describing. This is actually a good research example right here. This ethnography one, where you kind of say, here's why I did it. I wanted to go to their environment. Here's the people I had access to. Here's kind of what I did. So this is a good example of research with the available constraints that you had. I would try to maybe clean up some of these other ones to just say like how and why you did it. I can see here in this, what is an image, some explanations, but I need that in the story. I'm just going to skip ahead here to some of the work in terms of the ideation. This looks great. I'm not sure what this headline, I think you're trying to say like you ideate, test, iterate, and then go back to ideation. But iterate is, that means going back. So this headline can be reworked a little bit. You did some crazy eights. Okay. Again, why? Why did you start with that? Why that process? Have you done it before? Was it just something you read online you should do? You've got some nice sketches here. A quick scan of them tells me a little bit around kind of what you learned. Yeah, okay. Not too bad. You did a competitive audit. That's interesting. Again, if I quickly scan your story here, have you done competitive audits before, or was this the first time? How did you pick these apps? This looks like a pretty interesting breakdown. How did you decide on these criteria? Like, was that really what matters the most? If I come up to your research up here, you say, for example, kids often feel like they're alone. There's not a lot of activities to do in their free time. Most kids have a cold relationship with their parents. And you kind of repeat that here. But I don't see you addressing how the existing apps, these quote unquote competitors deal with that stuff, right? Like YouTube Kids, how does that help? I don't care about the interaction. I would assume you would want to evaluate that against helping kids not feel lonely or feeling entertained, but I don't see that here. So that's interesting. I'm just going to skip way down here because so far it seems like there's a lot of checking the box. You've got some good things in here, undoubtedly, but it's a lot of overkill, and I feel a little bit like it's forced into a process. I'm not really learning about you or how you landed on these things or why you're taking these next steps along the way. You're talking generically about designers here. There's another typo. You're talking generically about, UX designers, our battlefield is our white paper canvas. I don't know if that's a true statement. And I don't care what your thoughts are on UX designers in this case study. I want to hear more about that if you write and things, but for a case study, I just want to hear about you and your journey. So maybe talk a little bit more about that here. You've got some sketches. That's great. You're even calling out specific decisions. I do like that you have iterations, what appears like iterations. That's great. That's exactly what I want to see on more portfolios. And then you moved on to low fidelity mockups. That's cool. One thing you don't do here though is you show these iterations, and then the moment you go to grayscale, you don't have iterations. If that's true, I want to know why. Why did you decide not to do more iterations here? If it's not true, well, let's see those iterations. And then you go straight from these iterations to higher fidelity. You say you got some diverse feedback. Let's see, I went to the parents for the early feedback. So again, what parents did you go to? How did you decide on those parents? Was it just random? How did you engage them? How did you avoid bias in those conversations? What led you to really lead to some of these vibrant decisions? For example, you've got this layout here with 4 items. How did you decide to change that to 2 items on the side? Or this layout here that has this vertical, navigation or something. You change that here, but why? Same here. You've got this nice grid, but then it changes to have one featured. How you decided on those things, if you can kind of elaborate and show concepts and sketches and talk about how you landed on those decisions, that alone is more valuable than everything else I just read. This is all fine and dandy, but I really want to know, when push comes to shove, how do you decide on these things? How did you decide on this minute detail? That's the really interesting stuff, because again, if I'm a hiring manager and I hire you, I want to know that you can conduct research, that you know how to conduct research, you know who to talk to and how to do it, how to assess insights. But what I really want to know is, well, how do you make trade-offs and how do you make these hard decisions? Was there something in the conversation that told you this vertical nav wasn't clear or wasn't helpful that kind of pushed you to this layout? Tell me that. That's the really interesting stuff, right? Because anyone can come up with mocks. Anyone can open Figma and do these things and put it in front of users, but not everyone can make intentional, rational, valid decisions on how a design should function or work. And then you've got this interaction video. I love the video. This is really cool. I am curious, did you just go from screens to prototype, or is there a step between these two things? I would love to know. Device design. I don't know what this means. Device design. I have no idea what that means. Is that did you try to design the hardware? Because this doesn't look like it. And then some summary. So all in all, what I would say is this is an interesting project. Kudos to you for taking on it. But just like we were talking about earlier, anytime you have a fabricated project, it doesn't work super well, because you're not going to talk about real constraints that you and a business that you're designing for have. You're not talking about the real need of consumers. You're kind of jumping over certain things. So it's really hard to write a case study for these things or to talk about these things when they're just made up. So again, I'll repeat it. If you haven't yet and you're trying to get more work as a designer, check out Indie Hackers, indiehackers.com. They've got this section called Partner Up. I have no affiliation with them, by the way, at all. I just really like the website. They've got a section called Partner Up. There are also daily posts in here about people building things. You can come here as a designer, sign up for free. I think you have to like validate that you're a real person, and then just like look in here and look for people who are looking for like design help or working on something interesting that you can contribute, and then message them and say, I saw your project. I'm a new designer. I'm trying to get my feet off the ground. Can I help you with your project? I would love to design with it. And that'll get you a real case study that you can use in your portfolio and talk about. Okay, how's everybody doing? It's been fun hanging out. I think I'm starting to lose my voice. Let's see what's going on. The old social medias. Oops. All right, so let's see. Coming up on having streamed for, where do I learn this? I don't know. Yeah, MT, anytime. Cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream now. But thank you for everyone who shared your portfolio. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone who got to hang out with me in the chat and just chatting with me. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to hang out again in the future, talk about portfolios or anything else, let me know. You can, as always, learn about me at tannerc.com. I've also launched a new business called Shape at shape.co, where I work with designers to help them learn how to interview well, build their career, portfolio, resume, dealing with rejection, you name it. That's a great place that I'd love to support you. If you're interested in joining, reach out to me on any of the social media channels. But yeah, it was great hanging out. Thanks so much. Yeah, really appreciate it.